evening. The February 7th, 2023 board meeting is now in order. I'm happy to welcome my fellow board members and the public. I would like to take this opportunity to remind the public that the appropriate place for public participation in the meeting is during your individual public comment opportunity as identified in the agenda. Outside your individual public comment opportunity, your role in this meeting is as an observer. Paul, roll call, please.
Mr. Susan.
Here.
Ms. Wright.
Here.
Ms. Campbell.
Here.
Ms. Jenkins.
Here.
Mr. Trent.
Here.
The board will now hold a moment of silent reflection and invite the audience to join. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would like to offer my fellow board members and Dr. Schiller an opportunity to recognize students, staff, or members of the community. Ms. Katie Campbell, you're up first.
All right. I've got 4 quick ones. First of all, I want to say congratulations to the Bayside boys and girls soccer teams. They are both district champs this year, and I believe it's been about 18 years for Bayside, first time in 18 years for the boys. So congratulations, Bayside Soccer. The all-county concerts were 2 Saturdays ago. They were amazing. All our students performed beautifully. Actually, my weekends were in together. Yes, 2 Saturdays ago. They were wonderful orchestra, band, chorus. Thank you guys for your support, and congratulations to all our students, and thank you to all of our music teachers who made that happen, our secondary music teachers. The elementary programs are coming up, so if you guys didn't see that email, get those on your calendar. On Saturday, we had our BPS Hustle 5K as part of the walking challenge. It was great. We had a wonderful turnout. Thank you to our benefits department under Mississippi, and also to our contracted, like Cigna and our other health people. I'm not remember the right title, but for coordinating all that, it was a lot of fun over there at Satellite High School. And then today, I want to thank you, board and cabinet members who were able to come, and Dr. Schiller. Thank you for coming to the Children's Hunger Project luncheon today. It was a wonderful turnout. Our students did so great that presented, and I'm not going to recognize myself, but I wanted to thank you guys. And of course, we appreciate so much all our community partners that work with the Children's Hunger Project. They're a separate nonprofit that's not run by the board, but they absolutely make an impact on our students and our schools, and so we appreciate the organization. But I want to thank you guys for coming. It was a great program today. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Ms. Jenkins.
All right, so I want to double down on that Children's Hunger Project, just to give a special thanks to you, Ms. Campbell, and congratulations to you. Ms. Campbell sang a song for everybody and played piano as well, and it was called "I'll Stand By You." Not only was it beautiful, very, very beautiful, well done, you are so talented, the words were really poignant, and it was really touching to watch the little guy there. Just the way he looked into your eyes when you were singing was the most touching thing I've ever seen. So thank you for that today. I had the opportunity to attend, as well as Ms. Campbell, the NASA Day of Remembrance, which was really special, honoring the heroes. And there was someone who's, forgive me, I don't remember his name, and he's really important when it comes to NASA and the nation. But he made a statement that we were honoring heroes who lost their lives in the pursuit of education and exploration, and it was a really perfect summary for that moment. I also had the opportunity to go to Stone Middle School to watch the terrific organization Tied Together work with our students, as well as our Junior Achievement Glow program, which our females at the school had a really unique opportunity to be exposed to 3 women who were from very different industries, kind of inspire them to understand there may have been challenges along the way for them academically or personally, but they were still able to achieve their dreams and give them hopes for the future as well. I had the opportunity to visit both of our ALCs, which was an incredible experience. Honestly, I don't know which one topped each other. The staff was so welcoming. An amazing, amazing experience, and I asked them if I can come back there really quickly because I had such a great time. And I want to ask Miss Emma, I'm going to say this wrong, Emma Reish and her team to join us in the boardroom. Emma, is it Reish or Rish? Rish, okay. Emma Rish is from Palm Bay Magnet High School. She is making us all proud because she is the first basketball player named the McDonald's All-American team from Brevard County. This means she's joining the likes of high school prospects such as Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Candace Parker, Lisa Leslie. Emma is going to travel to Houston, Texas next month to play in one of the most iconic and prestigious games in basketball history. And outside of being one of the best high school players in the United States, Emma is also a 4.0 student who is beloved by her peers, school administration, and the entire Palm Bay girls basketball team who is here tonight to support her. And they're preparing to play for their playoffs, which is going to begin this week. I believe, is it Tuesday or Thursday? Thursday. 7? Yes, 7. Congratulations, Emma. We love you, and we want your friends to have a few words for you to say to your friends. Do you want to go ahead and walk over to the podium over there?
All right, well, first I would like to thank the entire school board and Dr. Ramjit for inviting me here today. It's a huge honor. I would like to thank my coaches and my teammates for all the endless support and just helping me get better and get to the point that I am today. I would like to give a very big thank you to Palm Bay High School and their staff and administration for supporting girls basketball, because without them, we wouldn't be here today in this room. So I would like to give a really big thank you to them. I would like to give a huge shout out to just the entire community. Their endless support and just encouragement has really helped us get to achieve all the goals that we have. I believe this is an individual achievement, but I also believe that this is an achievement for my teammates, my coaches, and the whole community, as well as Palm Bay High School. So I just want to thank everybody.
Yeah, I was going to say, we should all do a picture, but I did want to say one thing. Dr. Schiller, did you, about, a month ago, there was an opportunity that came across that you were supposed to head up to on a field trip, and some of the paperwork was like last minute, and Dr. Schiller turned around and said, I don't care what needs to happen, let's make this. And we were concerned we might have to hold a special board meeting. I wanted to tell you that this school district cares about you, and you are number one, and we would do all, and there is nothing that would stop us from giving you every opportunity to go compete and show who Brevard Schools is to the rest of the state and the nation. So thank you coaches, thank you everybody for what you do, because you are our face in other places, and it's amazing. So I just wanted to say that, and then I think, did you want us to take a picture with them? Some of you guys might need to stand up. I'm
Yeah,
rich.
if y'all start standing in front of me.
Let's go. Come on.
Are we all taking a picture or just the
Yes.
board member?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
gonna get in
I
here.
can't wait to
Okay.
see. From up here or down there? Up there.
I'm like,
Go ahead. I think he was singing. That's a really good idea.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm good friends with them.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah, he was at Jefferson when I was there.
Oh, okay. So that night was at Jefferson, not Jackson.
I got the,
You got the text, okay.
I'm like,
Well, it could be, I don't know, so.
middle school started with J? What a coincidence.
Oh, no.
Knew it was coming though.
All right. So, just so everybody knows, before Ms. Wright goes, this is something that we've done in the past, prior to COVID, and prior to, in the beginning, when I was a school board member, we used to bring in chorus groups and individuals who have attained things inside of our schools. It's an amazing opportunity, so I'm really glad that we're getting back to what we used to be. So, Ms. Wright, you have the floor.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to give a shout out to a couple people, and then I'm going to bring a team in also. So I want to give a shout out to Space Florida. I got the opportunity to partake. Mr. Susan was with me, and they are working diligently to align with Brevard County Public Schools and figure out a way to connect our children into a career immediately from high school. So it was a unique opportunity to kind of brainstorm with them on things that we could do differently, things that they could do differently, and connections there. So I was grateful for them to invite us and want Brevard County to be a part of that because it's a huge, tremendous opportunity for our students. Also wanted to give a shout out to a couple teachers at Challenger 7. So I got to take the superintendent to an elementary school, and we got to walk around and see our kiddos in the cafeteria. One of the cool things that we got to see was an exceptional music teacher, Miss Rockwell. She was teaching kindergartners about Mozart in such a way that they were all sitting silently, and they were engaged, they were responding. I mean, honestly, to see kindergartners at that age that were all just completely captivated by what she was saying, I thought, wow, this is amazing. So she was exceptional. And then I also want to give a shout out to a math teacher there who has the same last name as me, but is not related, Miss Wright. So she was doing amazing stuff in her class. We were laughing because she has a little song called Regroup, Regroup, Regroup. And Dr. Schiller and I both said, that might be something that we need to use in our board. I don't know. So if you hear me start singing Regroup, 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 thank you, Miss Wright. That is because you have given me that insight in that song. So, and then I'm also very, very excited to welcome the Space Coast Girls Bowling team. I think they're going to come out here. All right, the Space Coast Girls Bowling team is led by the 2022 Florida Dairy Farmers Coach of the Year, Leanne Yainert. They're coming out with trophies. Come on, girls. Come on up here. So, yeah, so this is a prestigious award because bowling is one of those sports that I think a lot of people overlook. And so I've bragged about this story, and I'm going to brag about it again. One of the really unique, cool success stories is that their coach, Leanne Yainert, was a student from BPS. She went through BPS schools, she bowled, got a scholarship to college, and then went and got her degree for teaching, came back to BPS, and is now coaching their bowling team, and then takes their girls to states. So I'm like, this is amazing. These girls have accomplished so much. In all of Brevard, there are 2 boys teams. I think it's 2 boys state champs and 2 girls state champs teams. So 2012 Bayside, 2014 Titusville girls, 2020 Astronaut boys, and the 2022 Space Coast girls. So that says the north end of the county are our bowlers. We're excited for them. So they're looking forward to nationals. That's the next step. So if you guys will give them a round of applause and congratulate them. All right, Leanne, the coach, we're going to ask you if you don't mind just coming up to the podium and saying a couple things. Which is funny because your role has changed, right? From going from being student. Oh wait, we got to lower it. We had a tall basketball player at the last. You're like, hold on, I can't see over it. We had a tall basketball player. So I wanted to ask you, what would you say one of the most surprising things that you've seen since kind of shifting from a student to now a teacher and a coach, and how those roles cross paths?
I would definitely say, don't tell the girls I said this, but the amount of drama on the team.
Yeah, high
I
school
love
girls.
them, yes, but I wouldn't trade anything in the world for them. But yes, that absolutely threw me for a loop. I was like, whoa, being on the other side of it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, because not too many years ago, you were part of the drama.
Yes,
That's what
yeah,
that means.
yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Do you want to say anything as far as congratulating your girls on their hard work and their dedication?
You guys did amazing, and I love you guys. I know I tell you that all the time, but I truly do, and I'm very proud of you guys.
Yay. All right, awesome. We're going to take a picture. All right, up and down, up and down. Let's do it. We got to get some today. So if you guys are coming. I'm not a fall risk at this point. See, I got ears.
Are you suggesting we the two gray hairs already?
Yeah. Hey, we fall, break a hip, we're done.
Yeah. I got a few years on you, my friend.
There you go.
Quite a few.
I am now.
All right.
It's like a room of champions.
Next up, we have Mr. Gene Trent.
All right. Well, we'll see if we can follow that. I think I got it.
You got it?
Yeah. All right, so we started off by visiting some schools. Dr. Schiller and I had the pleasure of going to the Gulfview Elementary to tour the campus with Mr. Coverdale. And we had the pleasure of going into one of the gifted rooms. We went into many rooms. But in this room, I've got to tell you how surprised we were to see this at any elementary school. And it was flight simulators, robotics, and 3D printing going on. And it was all going on at the same time. So there was these little pods where the kids knew exactly. Some of them were there just a day or two. Were put into this program, and wow, it was exciting. So when we thought that was exciting, they took us to a room that's not quite finished yet, and it was all full of flight simulators that these kids are going to be able to access, and it was amazing. It was great. So I have to say the staff there from the time we got there to the time we left, and all the teachers and the custodians, the students, stopped and called us sir right away. I don't know if that was a prop, but it worked beautifully. But those students are in good hands there, so that was a pleasure. I too spent some time in the ALCs. I did not visit the South. I was in the North twice. I wanted to see the high schoolers. They're there a couple days a week, and then came back for the middle schoolers. And some of the familiar faces were there, not students, the workers, because I had the pleasure of teaching there a few years back. So had some really good conversations. I'm sure we're going to be talking about the ALCs and structures soon, so that was nice. Also had an opportunity to visit Saturn with a couple of the union reps, Anthony and Kyle Savage and I toured Saturn, and then I was able to tour Jefferson Middle School with Dr. Ramjet and Ms. Trine to go through their facilities. So we're busy out there going through, and we got a lot of good things coming up on the docket for Brevard. But that was enough there, so what I would like to do is invite the Cocoa High School football team to come into the boardroom.
Big troops.
All right.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, I know.
Not your average football team.
All right, so led by Florida Dairy Farmers 2S Coach of the Year, Coach Ryan Schneider, Cocoa High School captured the 2S state championship in a thriller against Florida State University School, winning 38-31 in overtime. It was Cocoa's 5th state championship overall and their first since 2016. It was also the first for Schneider, who had led the Tigers to 2 previous finals, most recently a year ago. Cocoa also won state football in 2008, 2009, and 2010. Cocoa finished the season scoring 553 points while allowing just 197. In 5 postseason contests, the Tigers outscored their opponent 205 to 68. I repeat, 205 to 68. averaging 41 points per game. Congratulations. And Coach, I'd love for you to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate you having us here. I'm extremely proud of this group of young men. It was a championship year, but it was a year that really had a lot of ups and downs. But the one great thing with the game of football, just like in life, you get knocked down. So, when you get knocked down, you have to make the decision. Are you going to quit? Are you going to sit there, and not want to get up? Or you got to man up, get up, keep pushing, be great, keep pushing, be strong. And I really feel like with all the adversity we face this year, these are life lessons these young men will have for the rest of their lives. At Cocoa, we take pride just not in our athletics, but our academics too. We have Jaden Edgecombe here, who will be the valedictorian of our school. Where's Jaden at? Somewhere here. Over half the young men here have over 3.0 GPAs. So
Yeah, that's amazing. Good job.
under the great leadership of our administration, led by Ms. Stewart, yes, yep, 100%. These guys all know what the standard is, and the standard's always been the standard, and it'll never change. It's an honor to coach these guys. It's an honor to be with this group of coaches. It's a group of selfless men who are father figures to these guys. It's just a great place to be. So last time I spoke, I got in a little trouble. So I promised Ms. Stewart I will not say anything.
Listen, that's
So we're going to end it with Tigers.
All right. Good job, guys.
Up in front again.
All right, we're going to do a photo.
Who wants to hear Coach say what he said over there at the Civic?
Oh, say it, Coach. Tell them.
We're okay with it. No. Well, we approve that, so you're okay.
It's in my It's in my trunk.
No, come on. You gonna take that home and frame it?
That's fun. Can we just do that for board meetings?
That's all we should do. Yeah, okay, you called the meeting.
We did that every board meeting.
We would have a musical team play.
Yeah.
Then we would do that.
You know what we need now is a consent agenda for everything.
Yeah.
It sets the tone.
That's not controversial at all.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, just,
All right, Dr. Schiller, it's your turn up.
I don't know if I could follow that. It's remarkable.
You could bring up the staff.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can't follow that, but I would just like to send a few recognitions out. First of all, I want to really tell this public how much I appreciate the kind of engagement that this board, each board member has provided, whether they are going to schools with me and seeing some incredible, and I have to tell you, I've been around a while. I am seeing instruction, care in these classrooms, the environment that just absolutely wants to do the very best for your children, our students. Each of these board members start now a second round of going to schools with me. Things that are happening here in Brevard, I can use a framework from having done this a lot of times all over the nation. There are so many hidden gems that I'm discovering every day. That's not to say we don't have issues that we have to address so that make sure that every school is a gem. But the children are being extremely well cared for. And I think that's number one. Made safe. Feeling very much a part of a community. And most importantly, I'm seeing some of the most advanced types of instruction, of higher order thinking skills at an early age. Repeat, among others. You should be proud of what they're doing. I want to thank the board for that, and we look forward to moving on. And even though board members who go to bus depots and other kinds of areas, truly getting down into the real support area and giving insight, it helps us. We appreciate that very, very much, number one. I want to thank you. Number two, I want to point out that the kind of cooperation of trying to problem solve some of the issues that we have and find a collective solution to what you might call student conduct discipline, which may ultimately come out to be that we are having even a finer district. But the cooperation and the help that I'm getting with BASA, with Local 1010, with the BFT is greatly appreciated. These are the people who are in the trenches every day, and we're trying to work through problem solving. We're now going to having another meeting later this week, and with more heavy-duty agenda items, one of which we went through today at our board session. Then we're going to be reaching out within a matter of about 2 weeks to a much broader community. We need to listen and hear from your stakeholders what the issues are. Mr. Susan will also speak about how, in a moment, I'm sure, about how we're reaching out even further beyond our borders. The issues that schools are facing nationwide are not just in our backyard. Every district is facing common matters. I want to point out some incredible opportunities that my wife and I have enjoyed. I was invited by our staff member, and particularly by Ms. Campbell, Board Member Campbell, to watch some incredible musical talent on display at the all-county orchestra, help me here, the chorus and the band. And it was an incredible evening, even though my wife and I got lost trying to find a King Center and had a great tour of the Air Force Base. But be this as it may, it was just a marvelous experience to see the kind of talent that we have here. And that kind of talent stems from committed parents, what they're doing with their children and learning how to play their respective instruments or tuning their voice, and also the kind of leadership that our instructors, our teachers are providing. I was astounded. Almost 2,000 parents and family and friends were rotating in. And to me, that was a real highlight of a Saturday to be able to do that. The other thing is that I wanted to point out is that this staff is working overtime. And what we try to do now once a month is to generate the kind of highlights that are not getting the play out there. And we issued, and I would urge each of the stakeholders, if they can, to be able to access the kinds of things that are being highlighted by our staff, not about them, about what's happening in our school district here. And I think what we're trying to do is to showcase, because why Brevard Public Schools deserves that. It's happening out there. The other point I'd like to make is that many of us went to the Teacher of the Year, Employee of the Year, and Principal of the Year, and so many other committed employees that was sponsored by many contributors, but arranged and forwarded by Executive Director and the Chairman of the entire Brevard Foundation. And the work that they're doing in support of the school district is astounding. As importantly, the entire evening was truly a highlight for me, probably the finest I've ever experienced. And it only points out, and it's also available, the video that we have going, to listen to our people speaking, our leaders, whether they are in a support capacity or as teachers or as principals. They're really a testament to how much they are committed and devoted to this district. They know their business. They're so articulate. I suggested to Mr. Susan as the chairman perhaps to share with the board another step that we might do in order to recognize those people. Now I'll turn it over to the chairman.
Say it again.
What we're going to do for the Teacher of the Year, Employee of the Year, Principal.
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. So what we have is we would like to bring them in on a rotational basis where first I think, did we have the teacher up first? I forget what the order is, but they're going to come in and they're going to speak to, what they're going to do is they're going to speak to the issues and kind of bring us up to speed onto what their life inside of that classroom, inside of that school, inside of those positions and jobs and responsibilities are going to be. So what happens is we have the Teacher of the Year, the Principal of the Year, and the Staff of the Year coming in on a rotational every third meeting to bring us up to speed on those things. And I think the idea is to bring the classroom, the principal, the school, and the other, bus drivers and everybody else to our issues, to our forefront.
And that way, you don't have to listen to me rattle on. You're going to hear from the very people who are in the forefront of delivering services to our children. And I thought perhaps that might be something that would add to the celebration of what we're bringing here, be able to hear. And that way, it's not just a one-time event at the ACE Awards, but indeed, they're warming up in the event one of them, or two or three of them are Employee of the Year, because they'll be the ambassadors of education in their respective field. So I do hope that, and the chairman gave a thumbs up to it, and hopefully the rest of the board believes that this would be a good step forward too. With that in mind, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schiller. I had a couple of, and those were some great ideas that were brought forward. I think that it brings us closer to the classroom and to the schools and everything else. I did want to say I've got three here that I want to talk about. Fourth is the location, but Satellite High under Robert Pitts became the Top Tech Challenge Student Automotive Skills Competition winners. But not only did they win it, so this is our automotive team going to compete in a skills competition against other school districts across the state. And guess what? Not only did we win first, but we won second, and then we won 10th out of like 27 school districts. So to say that our automotive program at Satellite is not number one in the state of Florida, it is now official, and we're doing some great things. The other thing is Bill McGinnis won the Thomas E. Gamble Excellence in Education Award. So I was lucky enough to get this a couple of years ago, and what it is through the Space Coast Economic Development Council, they honor somebody in education that has made a major, serious impact for the companies in the area. So Bill won it because he has the aviation program at O'Galley High School. Many of you don't know, but the aviation program is the only standalone aviation hangar of any school in the United States currently. And that's pretty incredible. There are other schools that are a part of colleges, universities, other places, but it's ours. And he has taken things, they are currently working on things, the track for the Mars rover that's going up. There's another thing that they're going into the space station. There's things that they're doing that are 10 times the levels that we ever thought of as kids. So I wanted to say thank you to that. I also wanted to say we had a great honor. Joseph Akaba, who was a teacher at Melbourne High School, was just named the chief astronaut for NASA. And he's going to be overseeing much of the Artemis programs and stuff like that. And him being the individual that literally taught inside of our schools is known throughout the Hispanic community as one of the leaders and spends a lot of time working with kids in Osceola County. He's worked with us, and I just wanted to say we're honored to have him as one of our former teachers as we move up. And I wanted to say, Ms. Wright and I were invited to go speak at Space Florida. And what we do here in Brevard for career and technical is light years ahead of many other school districts across the state of Florida. They came to meet with us and put us on display to describe at Space Florida to other school districts, employers, and everybody else how we work and how we tie into feeding the individuals into the workforce. So I would say that all of the components that we have coming out of career and technical, and I was honored to sit on the stage with our career and technical chair, Joe from the Space Coast High School, along with Ms. Wright and a couple others to show that. So anyways, those were the 4 things that I had. I'm very honored, and we can move on. Does anybody else have anything before we go? All right, that brings us to the adoption of the agenda. On this evening's agenda, we have administrative staff recommendations, 1 proclamation, 1 presentation, 15 consent items, 1 public hearing, and 3 action items. Changes made to the agenda since release to the public include the addition of items F16, job description, payroll analyst, and F17, job description, director of payroll services. Revisions were made to the following items: A7, administrative staff recommendations, F14, instructional staff recommendations, and G27, 2022 through 2023 student progression plan, item I31, board policy 2521, instructional materials program was deleted to bring back in 2 weeks. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes, Paul. Next up, Dr. Schiller, would you please let us know about the administrative staff recommendation?
Yes, very much so. We are tonight on our agenda. Tonight on our agenda, we will be working through a number of appointments, retirements, resignations. We are working toward the fact that we'll have a proclamation for you, administrative staff recommendations, a very interesting and important presentation we're going to kick off on, a very transparent process of each board meeting, going through step by step the preparation for and a construction of school year 24 with a contingency for school year 25 of the budget, which I think is very important for our stakeholders. And our CFO and I have been working on putting this together, and I think there's going to be a lot there to really get our arms around as you start setting priorities for this coming budget and also for the second year. I believe in trying to do a multi-year approach to lining up priorities so that your permanent superintendent can be in here, who's going to inherit a budget, knows for the next year what the board's thinking is preliminarily, so you can plan that way with your priorities. And we also have, in addition to what was released for the public, there's some small changes. F16 is a job description, payroll analyst, and number 17 is a job description change for director of payroll services. And there would be some revisions made toward administrative staff recommendations, as there always are, instructional staff recommendations, and under G27, the student progression plan. And item 131 has been deleted for tonight. So that is what we have coming before us, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Schiller. Do I hear a motion? No, we're on the next one, which is our administrative staff recommendations. So Dr. Schiller went through some more than we normally do, but we have to have a motion to administratively pass them. Motion, do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the administrative staff recommendation.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Please vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Dr. Schiller.
Yes, I'd like to recognize following individuals with us this evening. I believe that Mr. Richard Miller is here. Richard, please. He is moving from the position of accounting manager under our CFO to the position of director of accounting and that's going to be effective immediately should the board concur with that appointment. We're very pleased that he is taking on this role. If not, we won't have an accounting going on. Mr. Miller, thank you for taking on this challenge, and you come highly recommended by the CFO.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening. I would like to thank the board, Dr. Schiller and Ms. Lozinski for this opportunity. I'd also like to thank Cindy for her leadership that you provide daily. Thank you to Susan Denyer. She was the Director of Finance previously, for all her leadership and encouragement she provided to me and also to the accounting staff. Thank you to our accounting team for your dedication to the many projects and challenges we faced this year. And finally, thank you to my 3 children and my family for your love and support. I'm excited to get started, and I look forward to continuing to serve the children and families of Brevard with excellence as the standard. Thank you.
We are now on to item C8 to proclaim February as National Career and Technical Education Month. Russell Brune will read the proclamation.
Good evening, Mr. Susan, Board, Dr. Schiller. This is the School Board of Brevard Proclamation for Career and Technical Education Month. Whereas February 2023 has been designated Career and Technical Education Month by the Association for Career and Technical Education, and whereas profound economic and technological changes in our society are rapidly reflected in the structure and nature of work, thereby placing new and additional responsibilities on our educational system, and whereas career and technical education provides Americans with a school-to-careers connection and is the backbone of a strong, well-educated workforce which fosters productivity in business and industry, provides a positive contribution to the area's economic stability, and contributes to America's leadership in the international marketplace. And whereas career and technical education gives secondary students meaningful experiences to practical applications of basic skills such as reading, writing, mathematics, and science, thus improving the quality of their education, motivating learning, and giving students leadership opportunities. And whereas career and technical education in BPS district schools offers students lifelong opportunities to learn relevant skills which provide career choices and personal satisfaction. And whereas BPS career and technical education programming provides high school students practical experience in meaningful applications and real-world experiences, allowing them the opportunity to explore and prepare for technical careers, thus improving the quality of their education, motivating at-risk populations, and providing student leadership opportunities in their communities. And whereas BPS career and technical education programming provides middle school students with the opportunity to explore and develop skills in technical areas, providing experiences that translate into future career interests. And whereas the cooperative efforts of career and technical educators with industry to stimulate the growth and vitality of our local economy by preparing graduates for career fields forecast to experience the largest and fastest growth. And whereas career and technical education is a tried and true solution to ensure that competitive skilled workers are ready, willing, and capable of holding jobs in high wage, high skill, high demand career fields such as STEM disciplines, nursing, allied health, construction, information technology, manufacturing, aviation, and many other areas that are vital in keeping our nation competitive in the global economy. Now, therefore, we, the School Board of Brevard County, do hereby proclaim February 2023 as Career and Technical Education Month and recognize the importance of career and technical education in preparing a well-educated and skilled workforce in America, and encourage citizens, educators, counselors, and administrators to promote career and technical education as a valuable option to students.
Thank you, Mr. Brune. Ms. Wright, you had something you wanted to say.
Yes, let me just say, first off, I am very excited about this because career and technical education is something that we're focusing heavily on right now. I was reached out to by a NASA events lead asking if this board would consider possibly making a day, excused absence for Take Your Children to Work Day. And so I think this kind of goes hand in hand with career and technical education, that it's an initiative that I remember as a child growing up, being able to take, you could go to work with your mom or your dad that day, and it was an excused absence, and it gives kids a firsthand experience to a real career field. So I would like to see us move towards allowing our children to have that one day and be able to go and experience what their parents do on a daily basis. I think that's a cool opportunity.
That is cool. So recently, somebody had reached out to me with the same thing.
Okay.
I had already checked in with staff. They had already approved the acceptance of letting the students get an approved absence, but we didn't make it an official one, like you're saying. So I have no problem with making it that. What do you think? I like the idea. It's spontaneous. I'm
Yeah.
there.
I think,
You're there.
I'm pretty sure, I think Dr. Sullivan had sent an email saying that they were,
Miss
no,
Klein.
Miss Klein, sorry.
Miss Klein, yeah.
That they were moving in that direction to make it clear.
But
But the board, but they need a direction from the board
Right.
to decide, do we
Yeah.
want to declare, was it
Yeah.
April 27th?
There was a date.
April
right?
27th, take your child to
Child
work day,
work day.
I love
not
it.
just for NASA employees,
Right,
but
for all kids across
any-
the district.
Sounds
so-
great to me. So, you good?
Is everyone,
Good? Sure. All right, there it is.
all right,
Good job.
thank you.
Right.
So can we bring our kids to the boardroom?
Yes, just bring them in here.
You may not want mine.
We're doing superintendent interviews that day, so
bring
we'll
them in
just
there,
line them all up. No, I'm
That's
just kidding.
right.
I think we need to make ourselves the exception.
All right, do I hear a motion?
For the, hang on.
Yes, to proclaim
the
February
proclamation, yes.
National Career, yeah, if you would like me to restate it after they say it, that's fine. Do I hear a motion?
Gave it to you.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. We are now at tonight's presentation. Dr. Schiller.
Thank you. As our Chief Financial Officer, Lisinski, makes her way to the podium, I'll do a soft shoe here for a moment or two. Essentially, for the stakeholders and our visitors here, that the board had established with me early on that as the financial stewards of a $1.5 billion overall budget, that one of its top priorities is to assure that, one, the budget process this year is one that is quite transparent, aligned with its priorities, and that we want to make this a learning experience for our stakeholders and for all of us. Where does the money come from? Where does it go? And how and what do we get for the money that's expended? So to that end, building on the very fine budget process and the budget book that the previous administration had used over time, that we're kind of accelerating the time frame for our getting down to where we are going with the budget. What I've asked, and we've worked together on, is to now begin this process every board meeting so that those who are watching, those who are in attendance, and our board members, some of whom have not had the opportunity yet to build a budget from the bottom up on their priorities, to now go through a bit of a learning experience for all of us. So with that in mind, we believe that sometimes pictures are worth with the proverbial 1,000 words. I'm going to turn this over to our very fine CFO, Lisinski, my military.
Thank you. As Dr. Schiller said, this first presentation is going to be very high level in the introduction, and as we go into the next board meetings, we'll continue to go deeper and explain it every step of the way. So the agenda tonight is actually what is a budget, FY23 budget by fund, highlights from the governor's proposed budget, and our timeline as we're building the budget. So the key takeaway from this slide is a budget is a plan. A budget is future-looking. It's based on estimated revenues. It's based on the estimated expenses. And it is not money in the bank. A plan is going to change. We know that things are going to happen. We will have to pivot at times. We'll have to course correct for fact of life changes as required. And just, we estimate what we think healthcare will cost. We estimate what we think the impact of inflation will bring. There's a lot of estimations, and then we estimate our enrollment. So there's so many things that we estimate. They're good estimates, but some of it's based on a year ago. You know, we're funding, or we're projecting a year out on what we think our enrollment will be. So again, if you take anything from this, please understand that a budget is a plan and it will change. Next, a budget is also reflects your priorities. So what's most dear to the school board, it should be clear, the understanding, the focus areas, the desired outcomes, and it makes it easier for us to prioritize and make trade-offs, because we all understand what that priorities are. And then on this slide, you'll see the previous board budget priorities, and they're pretty broad. It would be helpful if we maybe focused a little bit more on what we mean about those different areas. For example, maintain an adequate budget reserve to mitigate, sunsetting of ESSER. Make sure that we have enough dollars set aside for any kind of inflation or family empowerment expansion, those kind of things. Protection of the taxpayers' interests. We need to make every dollar count. Every employee has a piece of this district. Actually, the community has a piece of this district, and we need to make sure that we're very cost conscious on everything that we do, and to make sure that it aligns to what is important to the board. Protection of an excellent education. Again, that would be your direction. And protection of an effective workforce, develop and compensate committed and impactful employees. Now, we all know that, we have some issues with compression, and there's a finite budget, and there's just so many things that we need to take a look at. So again, having direction for the board will help us create that budget in the way that you want us to focus our dollars.
And I think the important piece is that we understand, I'm sorry, I think really an important aspect is to understand how we develop a budget with regard to a timeline, as much as the key to remember is that all of this is planning, and we're predicating so much on what might occur at the end of the legislative session. That's when we'll know about when the money comes in, and we'll get our final figures. So a lot of this is going to be now a building block approach going forward. And as Ms. Lisinski pointed out, we have to be mindful of contingencies. What if? How much more will the daily operations cost us? How much more will benefits cost the district? How much more? How much more? And so I think what we'll want to roll into next, perhaps you can give a preview of coming attractions.
Okay. So, what's very important as we build the budget, a budget is also a puzzle, and it has so many pieces, moving pieces, before you see the full picture. We must ensure that the district is able to meet its financial commitments each year with a clear-sighted evaluation of the district's current and anticipated fiscal condition. And as Dr. Schiller said, the legislative committee, they start March 7th. There's already bills going through. There's an HB1 bill that talks about scholarships. So the governor's budget did come out. That gives the governor's budget gives a direction but there will be many changes as we go once the legislative committee starts doing their work. Uncertainty in enrollment, that's a big consideration. We, right now, like I said, we project a year out, and we need to watch to see what happens with the family empowerment scholarships. I know in the governor's budget, went from a 1% increase to a 3% increase. So we have to watch that. We need to know, and we'll know once the final bill comes out. The healthcare costs, we've done amazing things, but what are those cost increases? What kind of premiums will we have to increase for next year? Legislative increases in FRS. In the governor's budget, he wants a 3% increase in FRS. So that will be a little bit more than last year, and that's like unfunded mandate. We won't get the dollars for that, but we'll have to fund it. What are our property values going to be? What is the millage rate going to be? Are we going to have a rollback? Cost of inflation, all those things. So, you don't count your money while you're sitting at the table. So what I mean by that is we don't want to make promises before we really know a good picture of where we stand. Now this slide is, this is our budget this year, the adopted budget, and you can see that, there's 6 funds in this budget, and they all have different purposes, and they have specific rules, and I just wanted to show you this, and we're going to do deeper dives as we go, as we build the budget, but just to understand that these are different pots of money meant for different areas that many can't move to anything else. So it's a lot of money. It's a huge responsibility. There's a lot of statutes that really talk about how we can spend those dollars. And so you can see this slide. And then when you go to the next slide, you can see the all funds. General fund, that's our operating costs. That's where we have all our funding, our operating dollars, and then you can see capital projects is pretty large. Our special revenue, and special revenue also includes ESSER ARP, which is going to sunset. Next year is the last full year. So we need to make sure that we're thinking about that. We have the internal service, which is all our health insurance, our casualty insurance. There's quite a bit in there. And the enterprise, that's small, but it's self-sufficient. That's our before and after care. And the point I wanted to make is you look at this, and then you see the general fund in the next pie, and when you consider all the salaries and the employee benefits, that's more than 76%. Then you have other things which I labeled must-pays. What is, utilities, supplies, things that you need to open the doors, fuel, parts. And then you'll see charter at 10%. Well, they're projected to be 12% next year. And then you'll see the discretionary, that flexibility that we have is actually very, very small. So we really need to make sure that we are looking at our priorities, making smart decisions, tough decisions, trade-offs, and again, out of all these dollars that we talk about, it comes down to that yellow triangle there, and there's things that that could crowd it out, right? So if we start getting more unfunded mandates, that that piece gets smaller. So that means, how do we reduce costs? Maybe we can reduce costs in, salaries, energy, those kind of things. But, that's people. So a lot of hard decisions. Wanted to point out that don't have a lot of flexibility. Dr. Schiller, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I believe that last point is very important. As Cindy has been explaining, we have very discrete funds that cannot be commingled or moved from one to the other. And as importantly is that after we deal with almost what you might call fixed costs, the lack of discretionary money has to be now aligned to your priorities of where we can apply it. We're at the point where I'll be kicking off in the next couple of weeks to work with BFT and to work with Local 1010 in order to start working through any language issues we can in our agreements leading up to. And we'll be asking the board to have a meeting in order for you to identify from your perspective, as well as our entire team, so that we can then have a great dialogue. And what my commitment has been to our groups is that during the brief time that I'll be here, we will try to work on the board's behalf and their behalf to take care of anything that has to do with non-monetary issues, because I won't be here for the monetary matters, but we can resolve some hanging issues or problems of language that might, as some of us have talked about, might be some inhibitors right now, or at least to get to that point so we can have a meeting. So the point that our CFO is making here is absolutely critical for our stakeholders. The board knows this, is that we don't have a lot of flexibility. And therefore, as the board and our staff are bringing to you, as we start prioritizing, we need to be thinking about that we all might not be able to get all that we want year one, but to set up a second year so that it makes for an easier transition, someone coming in here to be able to look upon some prior planning. And so basically, CFO, want to wrap up or turn this over for questions?
Sure. Did you want to go through the timeline?
I would like to, if the board wouldn't mind, like to just a couple more minutes. Thank you. Okay.
So here's some highlights from the governor's budget. The per student increase, $205. The base student allocation, which is the funding for, gives us some flexibility, the 121. The thing that I caution about when we look at that number is that's also funding the expansion of the Family Empowerment Scholarship. And right now, there is no real good way to see we can't see the formulas. And it's a little bit difficult. So when we do our when we do our enrollment estimates, it's almost like an exact science. We run it through all these models. We have the October and the February surveys, and we know exactly where we think places are growing, where the charters are, and the EDR, they do a look at the enrollments as well, and again, it's like an exact science, but when it comes to the vouchers, that's a little bit more murky, not so exact, and it's very difficult for us to see what those formulas are, and it's also growing so much. We still have the same staff that's trying to track this, and it's getting more and more complicated. So that's something to think about. Also, the mental health allocation increase, teacher salary increase allocation, $200 million, which is a great thing because they took out all that craziness about 75%, 150%, and 50, 80, 20. So what it says right now is allows district flexibility on how funds are allocated. So that should be able to help compression. Safe school increase, 40 million, transportation increase, 20 million. And the governor's budget does not fund HB1 at this time. So, but again, he does recommend an expansion to 3% of total FTE. And then the timeline, I'll try to run through this a little bit quicker. So we already received the governor's budget. And again, it's not like a normal calculation. It's only got the first 9 pages. It doesn't tell us how things are calculated. It doesn't give us all those details that we need to see. The Office of Economic and Demographic Research, they came out, and they're the office that provides the information to the legislature. And they came out with their new estimates for 23-24. And so and that's what the legislature is going to use. They're going to use those enrollment projections. So the governor's proposed budget used a different enrollment number. And so you can't really, it's not apples to apples. Health insurance projections, we're going to meet with Lockton next week and see where they project us to be to get a better idea of what kind of premiums that will need to be increased. I think we've been doing wonderful, if you agree. Ms. Campbell, I think we've done a lot of good things with the health insurance.
Definitely doing better.
And we did have premium increases, and those start in January. So we'll start seeing it, how those also help. And then we have the call for our school budget matrices. So those schools will let us take a look at their budgets and submit that back to us. In March, we're going to work with the departments and also ask for any new funding requests. The legislature session starts on March 7th. The Capital Allocation Committee will meet in March, and we will out-brief you and ask for approval at the end of the March. We will receive the matrices, the new funding initiatives, and be able to take a look at all of that and then start looking at priorities. We also developed the charter for our operating millage oversight committee, and we're going to, in May, the legislation session ends May 5th. We'll receive our conference report. We'll have a better idea of fundings, ups and downs, and what kind of dollars we would possibly be able to have recurring for things that we need to pay for, if it's salaries, compression, must-pays, whatever the board directs. And then again in June, we're going to receive another piece of the puzzle is the property values, because we don't know what that's going to be. And then we'll have another workshop. The governor will sign the final budget at the end of June. And in July, we'll get the taxable values, we'll get the actual millage rates. And I put on here also the trim ad, and that one's important because we have to place it in the paper of, what we're saying the millage is, what the budget is. But for the millage referendum and for capital projects, you have to say what you're going to spend those dollars on. So we want to make sure that we're accurate. If we need how many school buses, computers, white fleet, we have to list those things that we're going to purchase so the public knows how we're spending the dollars. And if it's not listed, then we can't purchase those things. Then we go into the July with the tentative budget, and September we'll have the final budget, and we'll be done.
That's all. Nothing to it.
Thank you, Ms. Lisinski. Is there anything more that you wanted to present on your slide?
Well, I guess.
I had a couple questions. I think the board members might want to say something, but I didn't want to cut you off. Kind of pause.
Next up, what I want to talk about is more about the general funds and how the school districts are funded, how the enrollment works and those kind of things, categoricals. So everyone understands how those numbers all come together.
Sounds good.
Please proceed.
Overnight, or
No,
that's for
next
time?
meeting.
Next meeting,
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I guess.
Yeah. Ms.
We're ready to
Lisinski, if
go
you can
now,
hang
but
on, I
we'll
think-
wait
Yeah, I
until
think
then.
that some of the board members may have comments or something like that. I just didn't want to end it without I didn't want to have you finish without knowing that you were finished. So,
I
does any board
appreciate
member
that.
have any discussion items on what Ms. Lisinski said? Presented? No? No? Ms. Lisinski, one of the things, when we look at the budget and it comes before us, we see some of these things like we have this much discretionary and all that stuff. We've never seen the budget by department or the budget by school. And I was wondering how hard that would be during this process that we go ramping up, is that if we can just kind of see each one of our schools, how they're spending it, because they get an allocation, and then each one of them spends their money based on how much that is, right? And it also just budgets by department. I requested about 6 months ago all expenditures above $500, and I took a look at all of them, right? But to be honest with you, it doesn't paint the picture of need, you know what I mean? So maybe when we get to that part of the conversation on the budget, we would get some sort of, and I can work with you on it, but I know I would like to look at that, and you guys may want the budget in that form too, because it helps you understand not only the need, but the spend behind it and everything else. So just something that I would request and open, and I wanted to say thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate you and all the hard work that you do and your staff, since you, like many other departments, have half the people that you need to accomplish twice as much. So I just wanted to say thank you for all your work.
All right,
Dr.
thank
Schiller,
you.
did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, but it's helpful for us to know what formats or what kinds of deep dives you would like.
Sure.
So that we can prepare for that as best as we can.
Yep.
And that's very helpful.
Yep, and I think it's, we had spoken before when I met with Dr. Sullivan and Career and Technical, unbeknownst, prior to the discussion we had across the street, they had said that they were going to start putting all of their stuff online. So she had already moved towards making a transparent budget for our school system in dealing with Career and Technical. So she had already been moving on that, which I was floored by. And she said that that would be something that we would like to do to move forward, and I think Dr. Schiller had mentioned that also. But we don't know the who's, what's, when, where's, why's, and we'll get to that later. So thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, I, just really quickly before we stop, could you, I think it might be helpful, especially for our new members, could you send us maybe the trim ad for last year so we can just kind of see what that looks like? Do we, can we
Sure.
pull that out of the archives and
Okay.
just send us a copy of what the public is going to see when that ad goes out?
Okay, and
Every
I
year.
also, actually, I've been looking at the other districts' trim ads and saying, oh, we can use capital for that. So that's one thing that I want to do as well this year,
To
is
change
making sure that we are utilizing what we can. Obviously, there's, so many different rules, but to make sure that if this is something that we can use capital dollars for and not our operating dollars, let's do it. So I
Thank you.
definitely would send you the trim ad.
I'd be careful of some of the other school districts before we move forward with what they do. I would kind of check with the state.
Oh,
I
no,
know,
no,
I know some of our partners, and they might do some things that are kind of crazy. We hold you to utmost respect, so.
And we were we were fortunate to have the AG here and able to sit down and ask the AG, hey, is this good? So we were asking those questions. We want to make sure that we are not dancing in the gray and that we're doing things that are absolutely by statute.
Beautiful. Okay. Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you, Ms. Lisinski. We are now on to the public comments portion of the meeting agenda items. First, can I get a motion to move the public comments, non-agenda items, to the public comments agenda items portion of the agenda, giving all speakers 3 minutes and the ability to address the board by name? Do I hear a motion? Move. Do I have a second? Second, Ms. Jenkins. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes. We have 13 number of speakers, and each will receive 3 minutes. I will call up 3 speakers at a time. The first 3 speakers are, try to get through all of them. Stephen Rainey, Jerry Hyde, and Stephanie Branham. But it looks like an M. It looks like she's emailed us. Mr. Rainey. Wait.
Great segue, because I'm going to bring to you a crisis of the bus drivers. We don't have the bus drivers, and you know that. And it's good to hear that you're doing zero-based budgeting. You gave us the time frame of March, and I picked up on a next one of April, March and June and July. And we need to work together to get to where we need to be. We're in a crisis for the bus drivers. We're losing them. I looked at the 715. You know, we lost 2 bus drivers and we gained 3, according to this report. But that's really not really right. We lost 2. We had 3 reclassified standby drivers, and we gained 3. So we had 15 routes affected, 9 of which probably will hopefully get filled by those 3. So we still have 6 compression routes that we got to fill, right? So where are we going to get the drivers? How are we going to do that? The number one barrier for the drivers is starting pay. We're not getting starting pay to attract these drivers. And we've said this for a long time. Last 2 years I've been up here. My name, by the way, is Mark Rainey. And I am one of your bus drivers. So $20 an hour is a minimum starting pay on the bus drivers. I'm throwing a chip out there, right? And then you got the compression problem. You guys can get together with the 1010. It's our problem together to solve. Let's get together with 1010 and let's solve the starting pay, publicized starting pay, so we can get a new cohort. We got an aging population of drivers that are going away, right? And we've got retired drivers that have committed to retire, and nobody to fill the spots. So you might not need the new buses, you might not need the new routes, okay? But we currently, we've got that as a problem. How does that affect our equipment? We're driving our aging equipment longer, 150 to 300 miles a day. It's not, the useful life of that equipment is going down, down, down. We're running buses that we're jump starting every day. Battery-wise, they have no air, no heat. Okay? You guys are doing great in giving us new buses. They haven't come. They were promised in August. They didn't come. Here we are. And the last thing is, we've got a rotating list of IAs on here. I mean, it's just massive in, massive out, and they've got to be trained. Did you know that we had to call ESE students today and say we can't pick you up because we have no IAs to ride our buses? Okay, and that's even with the principals riding the buses. We have principals riding the buses now. We have to solve this problem. Our maintenance people are trying to keep our aging fleet together, but our bus drivers have got to get an increase, and you got to solve this language problem of 9 months versus a year. That's a non-starter for a CDL driver to come in and say you're only going to work 9 months, and then you got to quit and go find another job, and then come back 3 months later and hopefully get this. So that's a language issue.
Thank you, Mr. Rainey. Next up, Mr. Hyde.
Good afternoon, school board. My name is Coach Jerry Hyde. I'm retired teacher from Stone Magnet Middle. I was the athletic director's PE chair, PE teacher, and coach of various sports for my 25 years tenure at Stone. I'm here to petition the school board in considering a yes vote to dedicating, naming the gym at Stone after Miss Ruby Mae Jackson. My entire career at Stone, Miss Jackson was a colleague, a mentor, a friend, and I'd like to just give you a couple insights about Miss Ruby Jackson. Miss Ruby Jackson intended Melbourne Vocational High School, graduating class of 1961. At the time, it was an all-segregated school, and later became Stone Junior High, then Stone Middle, then Stone Magnet Middle School. Ms. Ruby loved Stone and the Stone community and lived her life demonstrating that in many ways. Ms. Ruby was a custodian at Stone for her entire career. From 1976 to 2006, she won Employee of the Year several times because of her after school. In the community, administrations would have students help her after school so that she could mentor them, especially for students who weren't responding to other school-based interventions for their behavior. Besides working at Stone, Ms. Ruby was a community election poll worker, volunteer at Daily Bread, Pantry, athletic coach, mentor, and had numerous community achievements as a volunteer. There are too many to list, but here are just a few. She washed and took care of the athletic team's uniforms for years, all Stone's teams. This was to take a burden away from the families to ensure that each student athlete could take pride in their uniform, encourage coaches and mentored students and athletes and otherwise, attended and assisted athletic events, often supervising and organizing students. She was even hospitalized after stepping up to supervise our students at a championship track meet in Vieira High on a very hot day when the coaches had to be on the field for events. Helped organize the basketball hospitality lounge. When Stone turned 50 years old, in 2004, she was in Central teaching us all the history of athletics at Stone and went as far as getting a guest speaker from the Athletics Awards that year, a former athlete who played for the football team during the segregated years. Many students and families stayed after to ask him questions and hear his stories. She was the first president of the U.S. Gibbs Memorial Scholarship Fund. Gibbs was the principal from 1957 to 1981. The scholarship fund continues to help Stone alumni. She was actively involved until the passing of her life. There's a couple more points, but I'm running out of time. I think you all have a good understanding of what Miss Ruby Mae Jackson was, and I hope you guys vote yes.
Mr. Hyde, thank you so much for that great presentation. Thank you.
Thank
Next up, Stephanie Branham, Anthony Colucci next, Crystal Casey, please.
Good evening, Dr. Schiller and the board. It is Stephanie Branham's wish to be placed at the end of the speaker list. You're able to do that?
No, we just go now.
You're not able to do that?
No, we just go through. Okay, all right. Mr. Anthony Colucci.
My name is Anthony Colucci. I'm the president of the Brevard Federation of Teachers. Once again, I'm requesting that this board take action on student discipline. In the past week, I watched one video of an out-of-control sixth grader knocking a teacher unconscious. I watched another video of a fight involving several students at a high school where a student was thrown in the air and a staff member falls backwards, apparently on his head, trying to break it up. Additionally, I talked with several teachers at a school where there was a fight involving a dozen students about a week ago. This fight, or perhaps riot, was so concerning to teachers that I had to refer one of our teachers to our national union's trauma counseling program. Today, there was another fight at a middle school in which students and staff required medical attention. It is my belief that failing to act or actively resisting action is putting students and staff in jeopardy. BFT has alerted you to this issue. For at least a year and a half, BFT has presented actions that we believe will help. As president of our organization, I know I could put my head down on my pillow at night with a clear conscience. If a student or staff member is seriously hurt or worse, will you be able to do the same?
Thank you, Anthony. Miss Crystal Casey, Brandon Casey, and Katie Delaney, please.
Good evening, Dr. Schiller and the distinguished Board of Education. I'd like to share with you some of the history of my son, Braden Casey. and how the power of one principal, Principal Sarah Robinson, participated in the corrupt and unethical practices of the Vieira High baseball coaching staff.
Ms.
and
Casey,
Hawks
Ms.
RBI
Casey,
Club.
if you can just hang on a second, we're making sure that we don't mention staff's names. So you can say school board names, but not staff names for us, if that's okay. Okay?
I'll reference those people with the school.
Yep, thank you. That's perfect.
Just let me know when you're ready for me to start.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Good evening, Dr. Schiller and the distinguished Board of Education. I'd like to share with you some of the history of my son, Braden Casey, and how the power of one principal at Vieira High School participated in the corrupt and unethical practices of the Vieira High baseball coaching staff and Hawks RBI Club to discriminate against him for the past 2 years. But before I begin, let me provide this email whereby other parents can express their Hawks corruption stories. It's hawkscorruption@gmail.com. You see, nepotism is alive and well at Vieira High School. Coach Robert Doty passed over selecting Braden for spring 2022
Ms. Casey, if you
baseball.
can try to avoid mentioning staff members' names, you can always mention the school district's name, school board members' names, but nobody from our staff, if that's appropriate. So if you can just say from the school and their title, if that's okay.
May I have my time back?
Go ahead. I'm going to delay it 10 seconds for you, okay? Go ahead.
The coach of Vieira High School baseball team passed over selecting Braden for spring 2022 baseball. Then his son, who is now head coach of the Vieira High School baseball team, retaliated by cutting him from the Hawks player roster on January 26, 2023, after receiving information that I had complained about the unethical fundraising conducted by the Vieira High School Hawks RBI Club and President Pete Sosa in 2022. Incidentally, Sosa's son, Alex, was not present at the tryouts on January 23, 2023. However, Pete Sosa was on the field in the capacity as a coach. On 1/26 and 1/27 of last month, I emailed the head coach of Vieira High School requesting the authentic, accurate, and complete Vieira High School baseball team assessments for Braden. The athletic director of Vieira High School forwarded a document from the head coach of Vieira High School that appeared to be falsified based on the video evidence that I retain. To date, the head coach of Vieira High School's metrics for Braden's physical statistics versus his baseball skill sets have yet to be disclosed as compared to players selected for his team. My many attempts to acquire truthful information from the principal of Vieira High School and the head coach have been met with refusals, deflection, and lies. This entire board was CC'd on those emails. My email to the head coach on 10/13 asked why my son was intentionally excluded from the weight training that other similarly situated upperclassmen were afforded. His bias was revealed in his reply, the weight room can only hold so many participants. There's no maximum occupancy load sign posted in this room. The principal of Vieira High repeatedly stated in her subsequent emails to me that I would have to communicate through her to the head coach, essentially censoring my speech and respectful, legitimate communication. The head coach has not responded to me since 10/14 of 2022. As a result of these acts of discrimination against my child, he has suffered extensive mental anguish, and due to these events and more, I will be filing ethics complaints and seeking remedy with the Education Practices Commission, authority to discipline, Florida Statute 1012.795.
Thank you,
and
Ms. Casey. Appreciate
applicable
it.
sections.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon Casey, please. Katie Delaney, Michelle Beavers is up next.
Good evening, Dr. Schiller and BPS board members. My name is Braden Casey, and I am the son of Crystal Casey. I would first like to say that I apply the greatest amount of self-discipline as I possibly can. I make sure that my work ethic is above my own standards. I work as hard as I can make myself become the best baseball player as I can possibly be. With this being said, I would want the opportunity to excel in my game. Since the first practice of fall training, I made sure I made perfect attendance except for one practice that got rained out. I was on time and respectful to everyone around me, including the coaches. It is my dream to represent Vieira High School by playing the sport that I love. My work ethic that is above my own standards would include of going to the fall practice right after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, afterward either going to the gym or doing batting practice or even both in a single day. My endurance has exponentially improved from last year's performance as well. Even with all of my extracurricular activities, I still maintain high grades in all of my classes at Vieira High. As directly cited from my pitching coach, a former MLB pitcher, he stated, "As a coach, I could not ask for a better student athlete. His enthusiasm and desire to be a better baseball player inspires me to teach him more. As a new pitcher, his velocity has improved tremendously. I myself, as a pitcher, see potential in him to grow." My main point in this speech is directly point out how I don't appreciate the desperate treatment from coaches at Vieira High School. Last year, my sophomore year, a coach said I was not allowed to weight train because it was mainly for upperclassmen. So my junior year, I was excluded once again, in which a coach made the reason that there is a maximum occupancy limit in the weight room, in which this is not true. There is no written sign. My mom has to fight for me in order to include me in these activities. It is extremely hurtful to be treated in a discriminatory manner when I pour my entire heart into the sport that I live for. No matter how many coaches at Vieira High exclude me, I will never give up on my dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Braden. Katie Delaney, Michelle Beavers, Kelly Curvin, please.
Good evening. I had a few things to speak about tonight, but I'm going to speak on one topic, and it's the public participation policy that was spoken about today in the workshop. And I appreciate there being some concessions made, or not concessions, but some changes and updates made to step towards more public participation. But I'm asking that we mirror the county commission and the city councils that are around our county. They have not only one but two public speaking times in the beginning and the end of the meeting, as well as public participation for every agenda item that's on the agenda. As for the agenda items, if we have, say, 10 or 15 things on the agenda for the evening, and we want to speak on 3 or 4 of them, there's no way that we can get out what we want to say in 3 minutes for all the topics that we have. And that's not even counting if there's something of concern or praise in the district. And then you have the other issue of people getting out of work late, or like today, there was an audience member who she had a doctor's appointment and she came and signed up and she didn't know that the rules changed, and so now she missed her time speaking, because that was it. And so more public participation is what we're looking for. And, the more public we have inputting into our district, the better it's going to be, because people are going to bring things from all different aspects of life. And our district is very diverse, so the more ideas, the more opinions that are brought in will, bring you guys more perspectives to look at as you're shaping our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Delaney. Next up, Michelle Beavers, Kelly Curvin, and Gregory Ross.
Hi, Board. So I wanted to bring up the issue of letting books be seen by the public before they're ordered at libraries. Recently, a SAC member contacted me and said they had less than 24 hours to review 100 books before they had their SAC meeting to approve it for the librarians being able to order them. And that was the component that the state requires of stakeholders viewing. So in my opinion, we need something better than that. We need a public way to look at these things online, so a place on the website where the librarians can post what they want to purchase, and that gives the stakeholders an opportunity to look at that list and decide if there's something that's concerning. I also wanted to play for you a clip from the DOE training. The DOE training was in response to the new statutes that came out. It's for librarians statewide. So this is going to be a DOE clip with the DOE narration, not my narration, the DOE narration on how to view these books. Hang on a minute, apparently I just took it off of. One moment, just a second. Technology, the thing.
Specialists should always err on the side of caution when selecting materials. It is good practice to assess whether or not you, as an adult, making book selection decisions, will be comfortable reading aloud the material in question in a public meeting. If you would not be comfortable reading the material in a public setting, then you should lean towards not making the material available in a public school library for children.
That's from our DOE. I would like you to think about that when we're looking at these books. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beavers. Next up, Kelly Curvin, Gregory Ross, Paul Raub.
Good evening, everyone. The school board hosted a special school board meeting in December that talked about discipline. During the meeting, which included representatives from across the educational and community spectrum, there was talk of resurrecting a non-functioning disciplinary committee that would include teachers and students. As we headed into winter break, our chairperson, Matt Susan, held a press conference in front of the school board building pledging the same, a discipline committee that was going to include teachers and students. He never said parents, which I think is problematic, but I'm not holding anybody to that. So imagine my surprise when the first disciplinary steering committee happened and teachers, students, and community members were left out. Mr. Schiller stood next to the chairperson, Susan, during the press conference and knew the commitment Chairperson Susan made to the public. When I asked my school board representative, Ms. Campbell, why this happened, I was told that once the results of the discipline audit came in, she was under the impression that another committee would be formed that would include community leaders, teachers, and students. Now, is that a reasonable answer? Absolutely. My complaint is the optics. Half of the people in this room don't trust the other half and vice versa. The only way to combat that is through transparency, and I would expect better communication and transparency from someone who is as experienced as our interim superintendent. Now, obviously, I wrote this before the start of today's meeting, and I do appreciate the clarification on what is to come. However, I would like to see BPS lead more with transparency, not playing catch up after concerns are brought up. I have more time than I thought I would, and I have so many thoughts. First, to address the bus driver, not picking up ESC students is not only a violation of IDEA laws, it's a violation of ADA violations. That's a huge problem, not just at the state level, but at the federal level. If any of those families decided to write a formal complaint, the amount of money that BPS could be fined is huge. And as we saw in your budget committee, our budget meeting, we don't have the money to spare paying fines because we're not making sure all of our students are making it to their school campuses every day. School is a right, but it's also, some people like to argue it's a privilege. It's not, it is a right. If those kids are supposed to be in school and they're supposed to take a bus, then they're supposed to be there. That it's not, unless they've done something that violates a bus rule where they've been suspended, it's not optional. Also, I was at my school STAT committee today, and we were given the list that our media specialist had ordered. And from the law, I'm under the impression that they don't have to ask the STAT committee's permission to order books. They just have to tell us what they've ordered. And at least at our school, that's what they're following, which I appreciate, because at the end of the day, these are professionals and we need to trust them more than anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curvin. Gregory Ross, Paul Raub, Skip Parrish, please.
Good evening, Board. Today I want to talk about the proposed changes to School Board Policy PO 09800, charter school proposals. Part of my concern with the changes that are in here is that it's kind of well known charter schools are a risk. How are they a risk? They're a risk for the funding that goes to regular public schools, specifically Title I schools. Charter schools, in some ways, pull funding away from Title I schools. They're a risk to start up. Some data for you. In the last 20 years, Florida ranks 3rd in the nation for the number of failed charter schools. At the 5-year mark, 28% fail. At the 10-year mark, 46% fail. And at the 15-year mark, greater than 50% of charter schools that started up in Florida have failed. That costs money. They get federal grants to start up. So charter schools are a risk. They're a risk for the taxpayer, they're a risk for the students, they're a risk for the school board, they're a risk for people who work in the district. I'm a fan of charter school. I think it's a great model, but they're a risk. Now, where does that lead me? I watched the workshop this morning. I read through this policy. This policy went from a single page to a 25+ page policy. The board this morning, 3 of the 5 members that were in this workshop had no questions about that. No comments. 3 of the 5 of you. 25 pages have been added to this policy. Thank you, Ms. Campbell, for pointing out the issues. You saw the same issues I did. I still have a couple more with it, but I trust the template to a degree. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins, for having comments on it. I'm concerned. This board just seems to be on autopilot with a lot of things. This is an issue. It's going to be a big issue. We saw in the budget presentation, the vouchers. That bill's coming. You know it's not going to be stopped. That bill is coming, and it's going to have huge implications. I don't want to see you guys just be on autopilot, just approving anything that gets approved, anything that's along the lines. I understand there's disagreements in policy, but everybody here should be doing their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raub. Mr. Paul Raub, Skip Parrish, and Bill Perlman.
Always wanted to do that. So I was going to speak on the changes to the book review policy, which were originally on the afternoon work sessions agenda. I see that that was removed from the agenda. I don't know why. Maybe just for time. You know, I have hopes, I have dreams about why that might be. You know, maybe the board decided that there are better ways to spend the district's time and money than removing books from schools. Maybe that's not the best way to further education. Maybe the board realized that there are constituents who would like the opportunity to do their own parenting. You know, perhaps the board realized that the proposed rule changes are basically, I don't know, a slaughterhouse floor for books or a garbage chute. Or that perhaps it was short-sighted to remove the voting status of the actual subject matter experts who used to be on the committee, or, well, now I guess with the latest version, removing them altogether. Maybe some of the board members decided to cut the Moms for Liberty umbilical cord. We can dream. You know, maybe as there was the budget presentation mentioned, you know, the protection of an excellent education. So maybe that got taken into consideration. Let's protect an education. Let's not remove information. Let's spend our time on uplifting the kids and providing more opportunities, not fewer. I can hope. I hope it's not because of the knowledge that, you know, the state level anti-knowledge cult is going to make all this redundant anyway. Maybe it's, you know, that anything that it's not at the level of a toddler or Kirk Cameron is going to be removed from our schools regardless. Anyway, I do hope that when this comes back, if this comes back, we try to restore some semblance of good faith and fair-mindedness to the way these committees are going to operate, so they're not a rubber stamp. And please, please, please do not cut out the people with actual expertise in how this all works. Having gone through so far the only 2 review committee meetings that ever happened, and hopefully not the only 2 that ever do, I learned a ton from these folks who really know how this works, who devoted their lives to this, to reading and promoting reading and getting kids to read books, which is one of the more fundamental things we would hope happens in our schools. So please, whenever this resumes, comes back to the agenda, please, let's try and make it a good and useful policy, because that's not what I saw in the red line draft. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raub. Skip Parrish, Bill Perlman, please. You're fine. You got time, man. It doesn't start till you get up.
Apologizing for the lurch walk, but thanks anyway. Okay, so on your work session earlier today, there was discussion again about volunteering and things of that nature. And one of the things that's going on in this county, and this isn't something that's going on in all counties in Florida, is that you have volunteer requirements at least part of your choice schools. At least half that I could find in a quick 5-minute Google search in this county. We have no busing for the choice schools. And basically between those 2 things, you're setting up a tiered system where parents are going to have to make choices and have a financial stake to even be able to get a kid to school, get a kid from school with no busing. On top of that, like we've got this situation that happened with volunteering to be able to even have lunch with your kids. Before my ex-wife and I decided to move my older 2 kids to her county for school, for a school that was a good opportunity for both of them, I was able 6 years ago to go and have lunch with my oldest. Somewhere between 6 years ago and now, I would have to be a volunteer, have my background check done, all of this. Now, that's fine, but why is that necessary? You have school resource officers, you have principals, you have lunchroom staff. It's not like somebody in a lunchroom is going to grab a kid. If you're worried about pedophiles, there's already laws for that. And if the schools aren't checking on that, and if the police that are working with the schools aren't checking on that as far as circulation, that's a different problem and not a necessary problem in this. Going back to the choice schools, the only thing right now that you guys are requiring for any fee, and it's a nominal fee, it's $8, but is for re-ups. Well, if you're at one of these choice schools that requires the 20 hours of volunteering, that is a tax on going to choice schools, whether you want to say it or not. So with all this, like, we've got kind of invasion of people's privacy just to be able to go eat lunch with their kids. You guys sat up here at the last meeting and the meeting before that saying, you want us involved in our kids' lives. You want us involved in the school. You want us helping out. Well, sometimes the only helping out that somebody that's a construction worker, somebody that owns a small business can do is, I will show up and have lunch with my kid once a quarter. And that's it. And you've got to go get fingerprinted for that? You've got to go through this process for that? Why? I heard a whole lot during the last 2 election cycles about for liberty, about getting out of government overreach, about not co-parenting with the government. That's not what we're getting out of this school board right now with this, and I don't know why this happened.
Thank you,
but
Mr.
it
Parrish.
needs to be looked at.
Thank you. Bill Perlman, please. This is the last one, you guys. Did you need to use the restroom afterwards, or are we okay to keep going? You want to take a 5-minute break? Yeah. Okay, we'll take a 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Perlman.
Dr. Schiller, members of the school board, good evening. My name is Bill Perlman, and I wanted to address a comment that Mr. Trent made at a recent school board meeting. Mr. Trent, you said, and I quote, "One thing we can all agree on is that mental illness is alive and well, and I pray we could do something about it here on this board," end quote. But you were perhaps intentionally, not clear on about who the mentally ill are. So we're left to try and figure that out. So let's see if I can figure that out. Well, there's only 3 options, right? Mr. Trent, you made the comment about mental illness being alive and well immediately after Ms. Jenkins read the names of many people who lost their lives to LGBTQ violence. So, option 1, perhaps you meant that the mentally ill are those who murdered those people whose names Ms. Jenkins read. And if that's what you meant, then I rest easy, knowing that we've elected a caring and compassionate man who embodies the values of love, respect, compassion. So if that's what you meant, you were referring to the murderers as mentally ill. Option 2. Some people think you meant to suggest that your fellow board member, Ms. Jenkins, is mentally ill. So did you mean that Ms. Jenkins and perhaps other allies and defenders of the LGBTQ community, that they are mentally ill? I'm sure you're aware that throughout the Bible, God is shown to be a defender of the oppressed. I wonder, did you mean to say that Ms. Jenkins, as a defender of an oppressed community, is mentally ill? But wouldn't her support of an oppressed community make her more in line with those values from the Bible? Certainly more in line than those who judge harshly or commit acts of violence. Option 3, the only option left. That you meant that the members of the LGBTQ community, including the people whose names Ms. Jenkins read, those who were murdered, that they were mentally ill? So, victim blaming. Maybe you think all members of the LGBTQ community are mentally ill, and that would mean you're filled with judgment, disapproval, and hate for others. And it suggests you don't even know what mental illness is or is not. The American Psychiatric Association publishes the DSM, makes it really clear that members of the LGBTQ community are not mentally ill. The DSM is the Bible of psychiatry. It's written by experts much more knowledgeable than you and I. So please, Mr. Trent, reflect on what you meant.
Thank you, Mr. Perlman.
Reflect on your values.
Thank you for taking the
better.
time here. We have a 5-minute break to take a recess. We'll adjourn after 5 minutes. we are now at the consent agenda. Dr. Schiller.
Yes, sir.
Back to you.
There are 15 agenda items under this category.
Thank you, Dr. Schiller. Do any board members wish to pull any items? Yep, take your time. Take your time. We can get Kimball to- You're good? No board members wish to pull anything? Okay. All right. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent items if, oh, we don't even need that. Yep, all right. There's a whole other section that we don't need now because we're not pulling them. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion? If not, please vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It passes. All right. We are now at the public hearing portion of the agenda item on G27, 2022 through 2023 Student Progression Plan for Brevard Public Schools. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Okay. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? All right. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
There we go.
Sorry, you're waiting for me. I had asked Dr. Sullivan to, about the, I sent you an email. It was late last night, probably like midnight, but, and we've been here for a lot of the day. But I had a question about the middle school promotion to 9th grade. There's a component in there that talks about careers. And I know we're not mandating that the middle schoolers take that careers class, and there was in there, it says something about how it was incorporated into U.S. history in the year 1920, but it doesn't talk about ever since then. So I wondered if we could just get some clarification on that. I actually have an 8th grader who's moving up to 9th grade, and the school just sent all this out, and I went, wait a minute, he didn't take a careers class. So I just wanted to, if we could just make that clear, and if I can actually pull up. Yeah, okay, thank you. That will help me.
So career planning has been a requirement, not a requirement, back to being a requirement over the years. And when it brought back in 2020, I'm assuming not 1920, the state outlined that it could be taught alongside courses. And we work with our history teachers on implementing the curriculum. If you notice on any student's schedule in 8th grade, it'll say U.S. History plus CP. It's an actual separate course code. And so the students have 6 weeks-ish of a module that does all the career planning requirements.
Okay.
So yeah, the students do have to have that.
Right here in focus. U.S. History, Advanced, and CP. I did not know what the CP stood for, and I should have known.
Career planning.
Okay. So then my question is going back to is there any way, and we don't have to do this for this year, because I mean, people aren't knocking down my door wanting to know this, but is there a way that we can clarify, because one, that it says beyond just that year. I'm trying to find it. Because it does say in there somewhere about it just says a school year. Give me 5 seconds. Or 10. Thank you. I don't know if that was such a big document. I'm going to find where it was. I apologize. Oh, it looks like I didn't send it. It didn't go through.
Oh, phew.
That was.
I was looking at you quizzically.
No, I don't know why it didn't go through. It's probably still sitting open on my laptop at home. Okay, so whatever the page is, it says it has a year, and it needs to say maybe since that year.
Yep. We can take care of
So
that.
that it's clear.
Sure.
And that's that is not something that has to be taken outside of that. So
Absolutely no problem.
that'd be awesome. Thank you. Just no major change, but I think we could definitely move forward with what we have right now. Thank you, and apologize. I don't know what happened to that email.
Worries,
Okay.
thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to this? Did have one that I think may have moved around. I'm not sure if we saw some emails coming back and forth, but there's on page 13 of the red line version, there's a sentence that states no one test in a single administration should determine promotion or retention. However, it's proposed to add except for third grade ELA. This would make the statement untrue. On page 25 of the progression plan, it goes on to list many good exemptions that could be used to promote a student to fourth grade besides that one test. Can you explain that piece of it? Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me read it again. It's kind of involved, but it's basically saying that no one test with a single administration should be determined the promotion or retention for third grade ELA.
That is correct. So basically, the FAST test at the end of the year can't be the only determining factor for promotion.
Okay.
So that's why we have a good cause where it's a portfolio base. So you can build a portfolio, you can be promoted, a good cause, or retained in third grade.
Okay.
So if you don't do well on that third grade one test,
I see.
and you've performed well all year long and you have the portfolio evidence, you can be promoted on a good cause.
I see.
Okay, but I think to clarify, I think where the confusion is, the law actually states that in the third grade, we can retain a child based on just that test score. But then the law also says, here's all these exceptions. So our policy is not, if it seems inconsistent, it's because this is still the way that the law requires
The
it to be.
statute says that you can, but then the statute makes the exception with a portfolio for good cause. And it is very, that's why we went back and forth with the emails and we added the word for ELA so that it is clear. But all of the third grade teachers in Brevard Public Schools have been trained on how to build a portfolio to support our students in third grade.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate
Is
it.
that clear?
Yep, we just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions to the student progression plan? No? Okay. Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the 2020? Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. With no discussion, all signify in favor of saying aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. That concludes the public hearing portion of the agenda. Dr. Schiller, would you please let us know about items under the action portion
Yes,
of today's agenda?
Mr. Chairman. First item is H28, travel approval for a board member to attend the Florida School Boards Association Day, the legislature, and the board directors meeting.
Do I hear a motion? Is there any discussion?
Yeah, just really quickly. Because I'm on the board of directors, I'm having to go to every single one. I'm actually exhausted my part of the travel funds, and so I wondered if there's a board member who hasn't attended very many conferences who would let some of their conference money go into my bucket so I can continue.
Yeah, I didn't go to FSBA, so I've got a full chest of money for you.
Thank you, because I also have to attend in June.
And you gave me some last year.
I also have to attend in June for the final board of directors meeting, so thank you, I appreciate that. And I think with that, I should have enough.
All right. Okay. So, yeah, we already have the motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? No. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. All right, Dr. Schiller.
Yes, H29, department school initiated agreements.
Do I hear a motion?
Approve.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item passes.
The next item, and the last one, is H30, procurement solicitation.
Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, please signify in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item passes. We're now on to board member reports, discussion points. There are 3 items for discussion. Plus, Paul has a executive board request. Plus, we have some of those items that we had left over from the board meeting this afternoon. So I thought that it would be appropriate to just move into the board items that we didn't complete this afternoon. So the first one that we had was Board Policy 0121, Responsibilities and Authority of the Board. I'm going to wonder if you guys could go back to that agenda. You guys should be able to get on the computer. So if you guys all dialed in and ready.
I'm good.
All right. So the first one that we have is, what is this?
121.
Responsibilities and authority of the board. So first off, does anybody have any conversation on this item? No? Jenkins, nobody? Okay, so when I looked at these, and I had mentioned it kind of in the other one, it says responsibilities and authority of the board, board powers, member powers, legislative policy making, executive, and it goes through pretty much our roles and who we are and everything else, right? The issue, though, is that they don't line up exactly with state statute, like how they're labeled in state statute. So, for instance, responsibilities and authority of the board. This 121 says the board is responsible for the organization and control of the public schools in the district and is empowered to determine policies necessary for the effectiveness. Kind of a general statement. The board is constituted by the state Constitution and Florida. It's just kind of a general whatever, right? But then the Florida statute that's actually named inside the policy refers to the chapter in Florida statute that is actually only to deal with us creating a corporation for leasing. So it's just kind of off, right? And when we dealt with these in the past, this is what I was looking at. The responsibilities and authority of the board, if you take, for instance, and you go to the chapter that more follows kind of the management, control, operation, administration, and supervision by statute, says, in accordance with the provisions of 4B, Article 9 of the state constitution, district school boards shall operate, control, and supervise all public schools in their respective districts and may exercise any power except expressly prohibited by the state constitution or law. Okay, that's the state, right? Then, and I'm going to jump a little bit ahead, but when you talk about board powers, that is also defined inside of the statutes under board powers, and it doesn't signify the same. So as we go through these things, what I would like to do is line them like responsibilities and authority of the board. There's literally, if you look at the management, operation, administration, and supervision under 101.32, that gives you like the quick overview. But then if you wanted to go to like 103.02, district school board operation and control of public K through 12 education within the school district, there's literally like 3 pages of duties that we have, right? So I didn't know what direction you guys wanted to go. This is clearly defining who we are as a board. I think we would want to make sure that what we have on paper also identifies with what it is. And to be honest with you, there's about 5 statutes that identify each one of these that are very instructional per state statute that governs us, but they're not directly identified inside. So I didn't know if you guys felt comfortable we could go through and try to identify, or we could pull them and I could line them all up with the appropriate statute, with the appropriate title, and bring them back on the 21st. I don't know. It's up to you guys.
I'm wondering if Neola has all those, because we're already paying for that. And also, do we have to pay them per policy that they bring up for us, or do they have standard?
No, it's a flat rate yearly, and you pay extra for like if they have years where they issue special updates.
But I mean, do they, so if we say, hey, can we have all your bylaws and we
Yeah,
can take a look at
I
them
can
and
ask
just
for
see?
all the bylaw templates so we can see which ones have been updated.
Because then because then if there's updates, we have it. I would also just say, that one policy may be just a little piece of this, but then the other section that's and the reference, the statute reference there, the 1001.40, but then the other reference is Section 4 of Article 9 of the Florida State Constitution, which, trying to pull that up really quick.
Which is identified inside that statute.
Right. So, I mean, but before we go and do all this work that we're already paying for, might be good to see if Neola has updated numbers. And if we already have access to it for what we're already paying, might be good to just start with that.
I was looking at it, and in order to take it and rework it the way that we were looking, then it would just take us the next 2 hours while we just try to line it all up. But I do think that there are some so those are just the member powers, board powers, responsibilities, and authority of the board. But like when you got down to the executive, that's defined properly for the executive. When you talk about public expression of members, that's pretty good. So we can get some of these done. But some of those that are pertinent to the state statutes, I think we could do better. And maybe, Paul, if that's the direction you want to go, Ms. Campbell, we can put 121, 122, 122.1. You know what I mean, to get better.
Well, I mean, if we wanted, as we're going through, if we wanted to have those side by side, so we can say maybe where ours might be lacking or what we want to add. I mean, obviously we don't have anything illegal here.
No.
I mean, just briefly looking at Section 4 of Article 9, I think we could just have that, and that would be enough. Yeah, I don't see.
And to be honest with you, when a new board member comes on, this is part of the package that we should be asking them to review. And when you review it, it doesn't really state what is actual powers of the board. And it kind of, you know what I mean? I would like to do a better job. So I think your reference is 100% right. Neola goes directly by the statute.
Right.
So I think that would be good. So if you guys are okay with us looking at, yes, Dr. Schiller.
Yes, a good point. The essence of what these are saying remain in effect in the statute. I too would agree with you that we need to do a review to make sure there's an alignment with updated legislation or statute. But, that is a technical kind of a correction, but nothing of the essence of what the power and the authority of the roles have changed. And I think maybe that's what we're saying, almost the same thing, is that, what the role is, the powers of, et cetera, legislative policy making, the essence of member powers and everything we're talking about here needs to be aligned, because if you look at the dates, okay, there's updated legislation, but it hasn't changed the role or the function or the powers. So I think part of it is the technical correction that we could have our policy staff member, whoever that is, Paul, to be able to attend to this.
No, I think bringing those three, letting Paul look at Neola, bring them back at the 21st would be appropriate. That way, because there's a lot here that we could start crossing.
Yeah.
So if you're okay with that, we can move on.
Yeah, but the essence, I think, is that you are a policy board, and you established the policies and the rules for the district. We call them, I guess, administrative procedures here, but they're technically the rules. And that how you adopt policies is a bureaucratic, regulated basis of the readings and the rulemaking and so forth. And that the executive power that the board has is through the appointment of who will be your appointment of your permanent superintendent, and the powers that are delegated to that individual and what that individual is expected to do is very much regulated, as is the next one's the public expression of individual board members and your review of policy. And again, if you look at these dates, originating in '02, last revised in that particular case,
Sure. And
about 9 years ago.
One of the other things, like we not only do policy, but we pass the budget. You know what I mean? There's 100 other things. We approve all of the individuals that are coming up for reappointments and all of those things, right? I mean, like there's more to it. And I just think we can do a better job. And I think coming back to it would be great. So if you guys are able to, what we'll do is we'll pass off Board Policy 121, 122, and 122.1 to Paul to check Neola. We can now look at 131 on the agenda, if you guys are okay with that.
Before you go there, sir, may I just suggest that as it is a newly constituted board, and in conjunction with your search, folks who are considering applying are going to want to see how this board defines its philosophy on 0171.2. And I think that's something that I would suggest that you dig into as a board as soon as possible, because the earlier that you can define your philosophy and what are your goals, your curriculum and participation, et cetera. Again, last time it was done was 2002. Now, what's operational right now is, of course, the notion of what is your vision and your mission and your values and your beliefs. That is what I would urge that this board figure out a process to dig into that would go coincident with your search.
Sure, absolutely. And you had made some suggestions referring to that, and I think that would be part of the conversation that we come with. But if we can go to the number 131, I don't know if you guys are okay with looking at that real quick, since that's one of the ones that we're supposed to be taking a look at.
That was the one I had found.
Legislative policy making.
Yep.
Is there anything in here? Paul, has this been referred to by Neola to take a look at yet?
It says 2015,
At the bottom, but,
and Neola, the last Neola revision, 2000.
right.
Well, according to this, they could have issued updates in the interim.
Sure.
But I would need the template to see when the last update
Sorry,
was.
I meant like our version.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody that's taking a look at this currently, right? Is there anything inside of here that you guys have? It's pretty simple, and it's governed by Florida statute. I just want to make sure that before we move forward with allowing it, that they match up with Neola. So like making sure that Florida statute 120.5411, whatever, will do it. So if we talk about it, but we don't have any changes, then we can just have Paul check it and make the recommendation.
I actually had it.
Ms. Campbell,
This
go
was the
ahead.
one that I had a note on.
What-
So down under, this one's not necessarily numbered, but down under notices, that's at the bottom of the first page. All notices pertaining to policymaking shall be published, and then letter A, it says, in a newspaper of general circulation in the
Right.
district. And can we add the words, as required by law? Because, we already have the option now to, where we don't have to do it in the newspaper as long as the county has theirs. And they don't have it set up yet, do they, Paul? But they were working on it?
Yeah, they're working.
Okay, so if we put as required by law, then as soon as that's up and ready, but I think it might be a good chance to go ahead and make that change, because it's not going to be, we're not going to say in our policy, we're going to do it in the newspaper when the law doesn't require us to do it.
I'll be honest with you, that statute is what they changed legislatively last session, and it hasn't been updated here.
Yeah,
Once
Neola
Paul
may
does that-
have a
Yep.
template update that has that built into it. So once I check that, I'll find out.
Okay, but that was, and then there was one other thing, that's not a change in this policy, but as I was reading through this policy, it reminded me of something, and that is, let me find it, because I didn't write where I pulled it out of. No, okay, in the third paragraph, the second sentence says,
Which page?
it's the first section, sorry, under legislative policy making. It's the third paragraph of the whole policy. In the second sentence, it says, no policy can be in conflict with the operative law of the state or with State Board of Education rules. I think it might be good because we still have on the books the facial covering policy from 2 years ago. It probably would be a good idea, because that one is clearly in violation of not just State Board of Education rules at this point, but also state law. That's policy 8420.02. It would probably be good idea to go ahead in the coming months and resend that.
Yeah, there's actually sections.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But if there's anything that you guys, I think there's two parts. One part that says, we as a board want to change this, and then there's the other part making sure it aligns with state statute. And I'm okay with what I see here, and I just wanted to make sure that it gets reviewed by Paul for any changes, like the one, and then comes back to us if it does. Is that okay with everybody? Okay?
Yeah. So are we going to do that with all of them?
That's exactly what we'll do.
Okay, so can I suggest that we stop what we're doing right now and wait until we get that before we have further discussion.
Because it could get rid of all those.
Well, no,
Right.
there's only if there's Florida statute that's tied to it. A couple in here that are not.
Okay.
That's all. Like, oh, I agree with you. Okay. Next one is 1.2. Look at the executive. Yeah, this is Florida statutes under Dr. Schiller. Dr. Schiller, if you wanted to make any suggestions or anything like that.
Not necessarily. I just wanted to bring it to the board realization, again, the authorization of the board as a policy-making board and not as an operational one. And I think that's a very important piece. And the notion being of policy development, we're trying to bring in a very rational sequence over a period of time that'll extend months. As we get Neola's, it's going to be an ongoing rolling process. You shape the policies within the context of the law and statutes to reflect the philosophy of this board. And that's all I wanted to bring to the attention of the board here, is again that separation and where to put the focus. That you appoint a superintendent and you're full bore into now the search process, and you also appoint the board counsel. And then you delegate out to your executive officer for the operational side. That's all that I think is the essence of here that I think is very important. And I think, the alignment to make sure everything is aligned is proper, but it's just that part of a board is understanding roles as provided by statute and custom. And that's something that your new superintendent will want to be able to observe and be comfortable with as well.
What you're saying is you just want to make sure that we know what our roles are so that they know when they get here that they don't have a headache of trying to teach us that. You could just say it that way,
Everyone's in a
Dr. Schiller.
lane.
That's it.
Everyone
That's it.
has a lane.
Yeah.
And in an old movie, this is your space and this is my space.
And we don't, and I agree with you, Dr. Schiller, 100%. Thank you for bringing
Yeah,
that up.
but I do think part of the maturation of any board is to understand how they function. And as prospective candidates are watching,
Sure.
they're going to watch the extent to which the board observes, operationalizes, and internalizes that. And that's all that I'm trying to bring to the attention of the board.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Schiller. With that, we'll just move on to public expression of members, which is 149.1. If you guys take a look at this, there's no Florida statutes that are in it. We pretty much have had discussion about this, and I think everybody pretty much agrees to this. I don't know if you guys have any other components to this, but here's the discussion topic that you have. You and I have had discussions on this piece.
Yep.
But I think it pretty much states what the needs are, right? If you guys don't have any discussion on it, we can move to the next, but I'll
So does that mean for this one, we get to put a check mark in the reviewed
That's
box?
it. That's
Okay.
That's it. Revised or reviewed, whatever you want to put in there. All right, we good? Everybody
Yeah.
okay with that one? Okay. Next topic is Board Policy 071, review of policies. Take a look at this one. Administrative Process Act, Florida statutes. This one's going to have to get reviewed by Neola. And do you guys have any questions or details that you want to add before it goes? Or do you guys just want to wait until it comes back?
Chapter
Good.
120 is what governs rulemaking, so it's accurate.
Yeah. So you'll check that to Neola and get moving, right?
It's accurate, so there are no sites at the bottom that need updating as far as statutory. It just says we'll follow the Administrative Procedures Act in Chapter 120, which is what Chapter 120 governs, so it's accurate.
I think he was looking in the big paragraph at the bottom. There's
Oh,
three
those-
statutes
all right.
referenced there.
Penalties for failure to comply with
Oh,
Florida
yeah,
statute.
I'll double check those and.
Okay.
But you're right, I think if there's any additionals that need to be added to it, whatever.
And when I get the templates, I'll run through and make sure Neola hasn't updated any of these. If they have, I'll get you guys the templates to see if you want to adopt any of those, and then we can put those on rulemaking.
Beautiful, thank you. All
Mr.
right.
Chairman, it also goes back to the retreat, when you put out this basically parallels.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's important that the public understands that the board has, I believe, signed these guidelines, which in effect are your operating protocols that reinforce this. It almost stands as your administrative rules. I may be wrong with that, but it's just what, as an understanding, because the public may not understand that, or stakeholders.
Yep. No,
Thank you.
I agree with you 100%. Thank you, Dr. Schiller. If we can move on to 171.2, review of policy, philosophy, and goals. It will be the policy of the board to review its policies, philosophy of education, and goals. Continuing basis every 5 years to keep us within, this keeps us within statutory law, right? And I think that this is the component that Dr. Schiller and I wanted to talk to you guys about, that maybe we wanted to change a couple of these. Maybe it's time to review. Dr. Schiller, you had mentioned to me kind of a format for that. Did you want to discuss that?
Yeah, one suggestion I have, this is very critical, I believe, because we as staff work from the notion of what is stated, which, as far back as most of us can remember, it goes, at least predates Tammy's time of 16 years, okay? Is this your mission as stated? Very fine, but is this board's mission as such? I would suggest that you set up a process. Maybe 1 or 2 board members be assigned to lead, one to define and bring back to the board your mission. Maybe 1 or 2 board members then look at the vision. BPS will serve our community, enhance our students' lives by delivering the highest quality of education and a culture of education, collaboration, and learning. If so, you got it. If you need to amend, so be it. Perhaps, again, Mr. Chairman, you might think about delegating to 1 or 2 board members, hash that out and bring it back and with recommendations. And then, what are the values? What are the organizational beliefs? That would go a long way in helping this board send the message out to its prospective candidates as well as to staff. This is how we see it going. And again, it's a healthy exercise. So I'm just suggesting that perhaps you might want to think about having each board member or 2 board members, I think we can do, to be assigned to that, bring it back to the committee of the whole.
2 would require noticing and open to the public with minutes and everything, so.
Well, that's
So
not
I
a
think-
bad input process.
I think we can, I understand where you're going because my mind was wrapped around it, because if 2 board members are sitting down writing the mission statements, it becomes a sunshine violation and we have to follow the law. But I think the essence of what Dr. Schiller is trying to do is good. That we kind of look at all 3 of them, right? But then if we want to, we can have a couple of board members within reason on the policy process to make sure that we're doing it correctly, work on some of them, right? So
Yeah.
let's take a look at it, because I
And
like.
to the point that the gentleman made here is a transparency. Having that kind of discussion and drawing some community input may be a way for the board to proceed. I don't know if that's the way the board wishes to.
If you,
I want to jump in here. I mean, if we're going to start talking about mission and vision and all that stuff, if we're going to eradicate a mission statement that people say over and over and over again and know by heart, then I think we should be asking our teachers and our staff what they want. I think it makes a lot more sense to come from them. So I hear what you're saying, Dr. Schiller, in terms of like making it go faster or more organized to have the 2 board members.
No, I think
But
the
I think
input
it's
is the
really
point.
simple to just have people throw some ideas out there and potentially, it's a collaboration and a blend from opinions of people who are on the
Yeah.
ground doing the work.
I guess I'm suggesting it's not something that staff should be bringing to you. It should
Right.
have input.
Right.
It's just that you represent your constituencies and all of our stakeholders, and that might be a very good exercise time, but a very good exercise to hold the public hearings and get the input. Thank you.
And I think, Dr. Schiller, to be honest with you, there's a lot of things that have changed over the last couple of years, 2 election cycles, stuff like that, that may be an appropriate time to do it. I like the fact that you're trying to get us to work together. I was going to suggest that I would work with Ms. Jenkins on one of them, you know what I mean, just as a positive. So if you would allow Mr. Gibbs to kind of put together some sort of a plan, and then
He's
we
your
can,
man.
we can
He's
bring
your
back,
appointee.
we can bring back sort of a plan for everybody at the 21st meeting that is appropriate, so we don't break sunshine, but then we also have the appropriate things, if that's okay with everybody. Does that sound good? Okay? Okay.
1030.1 is a simple one, the last one we have
Yes.
here. It boils down to that administrative procedures are developed by staff, superintendent, to support and clarify and provide guidance to staff of how to implement your policies. It is left here to be the prerogative of the superintendent whether or not they should come back to the board for review, and Mr. Gibbs can explain what that review would be. But the notion is that a quality control check, you want to leave it for your current interim for a few more months and your permanent to use discretion. Right now, it's a pretty lean administrative policy list when you go onto our website in support of, or do you want to change the language here slightly? Your board council could change it. That would make it a requirement to bring these back for a line, to make sure that they reflect. The last thing you want to do is to have a policy going in a certain direction and find out later, well, why isn't that happening?
Yep, I agree.
So that I'll leave to the board's discretion what you would like to do. It'd be just a matter of wordsmithing what direction this board wants.
So I think what Dr. Schiller was saying basically, so that I could sum it up, and I'd love to have discussion from the board, is that one, do we want to have these approvals to come back to the board? And then is there any transparency that we want to create among that? Maybe make sure that they're all published to the internet, something like that. So with that, and any other changes to the development of administrative procedures, I'd love to have your guys' discussion. So Ms. Campbell, you hit your thing first. Go ahead.
They are published to the internet already on our same where our policies are, so I think we're good there. But I'm fine. I think we talked about that a few weeks ago. Of this, I don't. Let me ask a question to Paul real quick. Do we? Because it's not policy, do we have to go through rulemaking, or, and also usually they're going to be later, like we revise a policy, staff revises administrative procedures and they bring them to us later, or is it just a vote?
You have options. If you want, you can tie them to the actual policy and incorporate them into the policy. That way, every time you update the policy, then the procedure comes along with it. We do this with the workplace drug policy, where it ties into our procedure, which is the guidelines.
Right. I guess I can see some situations where the administrative procedures might not, they wouldn't be ready, like at least at the first work session, because they're going to wait to see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they'll need to know what the updates are so they can update them and then.
So, but and it's for my first question, do we have to have like the 2 weeks notice and the 4 weeks and all of that?
If you're going to tie them to policy, it'll go through rulemaking. If it's not tied to policy, I would have to look at whether rulemaking would be required.
Okay.
There may be circumstances, just like in our policy, where the statutes require the board to approve. In that case, those policies are always or procedures will always go through rulemaking. If it's not required, then it might just be approving. The board may say, hey, we just want to see it, so we can say we like it and give the approval to the super to proceed with implementing, and that would be an information item that the board could discuss. So it's really up to how the board wants to handle the procedures.
I think, if I may ask a question real quick.
That was all I had.
So I think the idea is that if you have a policy there, that when you click the administrative procedures on the internet, whatever administrative procedures follow, that policy is there. And we've done this in the past where we've never had to do rulemaking authority for those procedures. If they're set up like that, if you can take a look at that.
Right, yeah, they're separate right now for the super to approve. You've delegated that to them. But if you tie it to a policy so that at the top it says procedure associated with, or whatever the link's going to be, you've now incorporated it. So every time you change it, you're going to have to go through rulemaking.
Well, I'll be on, okay, I'm sorry. Anybody else?
Personally, I like the idea of tying it to the policy because the policy should direct all the procedures that are done to the district. And so I think what we see sometimes is that there will be a procedure that's in place that's not tied to any policy, and we're not really sure how it's being directed, why it's being directed that way. So my personal opinion would be tie it to the policy, because policy should be directing all the procedures. That's really how it should flow.
Mr. Trent? You have anything?
No, other than I think it's good practice.
Yep.
I think that the policy, I agree.
Yep. Ms. Jenkins?
Our policies do direct our administrative procedures, and again, we make blanket statements that some things don't align, but we don't come to the table with actual examples of those things happening. Our staff is typically reviewing the administrative procedures when they update the policy. One of the negatives that we just discussed to tying it to the policy is that we're going to be forced to put it through rulemaking. Many of these administrative procedures have to change, especially when they implement it and they realize there's issues with it. Then we're going to stunt the updating and changing and revisions of those administrative procedures because we're going to put it on the clock now for a revision, and there's really no need for it. The way to have more oversight over it would be to say that we want to see it when it happens, or put it on as an information item of some sort so that the public has access to, I mean, it's on the website, but that way they know it's been revised, or there's another notice for them to know that. But then it avoids our staff being hands tied to not update something that clearly isn't working, or maybe isn't following the correct law or whatever. Because I guarantee you they can come to the table and tell us how many times things like that have happened where they realize they need to change something, and then we're going to wait another, 6-9 weeks just to update it. It doesn't really make any sense. It's not very efficient.
Okay, so with that, I think that we should attach them for board approval. I think we should also have all of our administrative procedures available online to publish with them. I think, Mr. Gibbs, my request would be, can we take a look at both ways that we might be able to do it, with the fact that it goes into rulemaking and without, to suffice for Ms. Jenkins that way. But I think, to your comment, there's not only older administrative procedures that are out there that may not even be in effect anymore that are just sitting out there. There's other ones that don't align to policy. We know that. There's a lot of that that goes on, and this will effectively get there. So I really appreciate that. Plus, we're asking him to come before the board for approval for each one of them anyway. So there's going to be a little bit of an administrative procedure anyway. So I think that with that. So as long as we can move on that, Mr. Gibbs, I think that we're in a good place. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody
So
else have
I'm going to ask again, when we make statements that things aren't aligned, we're telling the public that people aren't doing their job. If you have a specific example about something that isn't aligned, you as a board member have full authority to bring that up to the staff and to the superintendent at any point to address that concern in that issue. I've now heard it twice tonight. No examples. If you see that as a concern, bring it up. Bring it up to someone so it can be revised. Let's stop painting this district as if we have all these problems, but we don't have any proof of it. It's not fair to our staff.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. So seeing that, we're done with 1030.01. That concludes this afternoon's work. I think we moved to, we had discussed earlier that we would bring back the meeting times, 9 a.m. I had a recommendation, if you guys are okay. One of the things that we did today was that any of the time that we had, it just rolled to the board meeting, and I'm okay with that. If you guys wanted to, we might be able to try at 1 o'clock, start at 1 p.m., and then any of the policies that we don't get, we just roll, and then in the event that it continues to get bigger and bigger, then we realize that we need to come up with another solution, go down to 9 o'clock, or create a workshop. Does that make sense to you?
So, I'm sorry, just summarizing,
Yes, ma'am.
so you want to start at 1 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, but you guys gave direction that this is what you guys want to do. So I think, though, that starting at 1 with the agenda, and anything that doesn't happen during the workshop rolls to the meeting, right? Then what ends up happening is we just address them there. And if we work through that and it seems like it's not a good solution and we need more time, then we'll know that after a couple of meetings and we can revisit it. How does that sound to you guys? Is that okay? It gives you kind of what you guys are looking for? Okay.
We're going to make it kind of a I'm going to say semi-permanent change. I mean, there may come a time when we're kind of back to where we have been in previous years, where a 2-hour workshop is enough. And sometimes we schedule a 2-hour workshop, and just for you guys, and we're done in 45 minutes. It's been a while. But, you know, it just depends, because once we get through all this initial revision process, we should be at a more, reasonable time. But I mean, in the meantime, yes, 1 o'clock's much better than 9, and then we still have morning times to school visits or whatever we have.
Absolutely.
And expulsion hearings and things like that when we have those too.
Okay, so that's one of them. I got you in a second here, Paul. The other one is that Dr. Schiller and I had worked with going to invite all the other school districts I apologize, Dr. Schiller, it's somewhere in here. We're going to go ahead and invite other school districts and school board superintendents to a meeting to discuss discipline collaboration as we're moving through this. One of the issues that you see across the state of Florida is now Orange County's talking about it. Everybody that I know that's a personal friend that's a chairperson across the state is bringing this up to me on the side, and they're saying, hey, what are you guys doing? What's going on? And I just, I feel like we could invite them to a collaborative session where we all discuss best practices, and through that, we might be able to improve some of the things that we have. So the idea is to invite like districts through Central Florida and some other ones. I'll work with head of superintendents, Dr. Phil Montford, head of the administrators, Ms. White, and head of the School Board Association, Ms. Messina, to kind of collaborate on that. Location, we'll figure it out, and we're trying to shoot for later part of February to just do it, just as a quick update. So if that's okay with you guys, just wanted to hear what you guys had to say.
I'm going to throw out another option, and that is we already have through the Central Florida School Boards Coalition, you may have missed a letter in there, once a month. I mean, generally, we have just the chair. I think the next meeting is Monday. But Abby Sanchez, who is serving as our chairman for this year, I think she would be open. Certainly, it's a hot topic. But that's an avenue we have where we are all invited. It's already publicly noticed. It's virtual right now, but we have all the Central Florida school boards and superintendents that can be in attendance. That might be an option if that's something that's already out there.
Yeah.
The forum is already out there.
And I really like that. I think some of the participating boards that I've had that are there are also that may not be a part of the Central Florida, because there's a couple that are outliers like Collier and Lee and stuff like that. So I can definitely take a look at that, and then if that's not, then we'll move towards inviting them and having something. But I did just kind of want to mention to you guys.
Would this be something that the entire board would attend, or
You don't have to. You can.
Okay, so it would still be noticed to
Yeah.
go through that whole
Yeah,
entire process?
We
Okay.
have to. We have to just with the whole thing. But I just wanted to see, it's kind of a thought that we're putting together. It still needs some collaboration and movement, that's all. Okay? We're good. Now, the next one is Paul, Mr. Gibbs.
You
You
were going
have
to do
a...
busted on the agenda.
Yeah.
There's something about busted on you.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm sorry. Sorry, guys, I get all these things. All right, so 4 years ago or 5 years ago, Melbourne police officer came to me, Mr. Desormier, and we worked on a slew of safety, right? Not only with our crossing guards, not only with every single aspect that our safety has. We improved, we found better practices and stuff like that. One of the components that we did was to bring awareness for people passing our buses, and when the arms were open, is that we actually sent out the police. They coordinated with the transportation, and they asked them, they said, where, because your bus drivers already know where this is. They all identify, every day I open the arms at this place and 5, 6 cars fly by me. So they pre-identify that, and then what they do is they give a list to the police, and the police set up a sting operation to bust all the people that are inside of there. Now, out of this unique opportunity, we did it. It was an amazingly positive. The bus drivers loved it, and we caught a superintendent. So Dr. Blackburn was caught passing the school bus and was given a warning. So just so you know, it made the news. It was a big deal. And so anyways, I engaged with the Melbourne Police Department, and I thought that if you guys were interested, we could give the opportunity to our other board members to try to take advantage of doing the same thing with their respective cities. So the bus drivers loved it. It was a great program. It's a big safety issue, so.
I have questions about it, just I'm not sure exactly how it
No,
works. So are
it's
you
fun.
sitting with the police
Oh, yeah.
officer, is what you're
Oh,
saying?
yeah.
Okay, all
It's
right.
fun. You might even drive with the bus. You can drive with the bus, you can drive with the police officer. There's a bunch of different options. But each municipality may have their own rules and engagement. I just know that I did it with Melbourne. It was a lot of fun. I was going to do it again, but I didn't want to do it without inviting you guys on a bigger aspect to do it with the rest.
Okay. I like it. I mean, I'll go to it.
Okay. Dean?
We're tired. This is like our.
If you guys are interested, if you can just email Tammy and let
Okay.
her know that you're interested, and then we'll move forward from there. Is there anybody else that has any other issues?
Yes, I have one.
Oh,
You can speak.
okay.
No, I have a
Is it
couple.
okay if she goes?
Yeah, go for it.
So there's no secret here that I have been touring all of our transportation depots and really diving deep into what's going on there and how we get them help. And I just want to relay back to the board, I've relayed this to Dr. Schiller, we are at the point where it is a crisis, the transportation is. We have to focus some serious attention towards our bus drivers and making sure that we're adequately paying them, because right now we're losing them. They're coming to Brevard, they're getting the training that they need, and then they're leaving immediately to go work at other places. And, you know, as we heard from Mr. Rainey today, we have a retiring population. We have bus drivers that are already in drop. There's no plan whatsoever. I asked Mr. Miller to send me what the vacancies are. Just tell me, hey, what are we looking for? How many do we have? And so he sent me those numbers, and I want to share them with you. So, sorry. We're down 95 bus drivers. He's a total of 114 positions between mechanics, technicians, and then helpers, and then bus drivers. It's a total of 114 bus drivers or positions that we're missing within transportation. When you're talking about a department that is 400 people, that's significant.
25%.
Yeah,
That's insane.
it's huge. So I just really want to task us with a few things. I was challenged, will we ride a bus, each one of us board members? Would you be willing to get on a bus and ride a route so that you can see what some of our bus drivers are facing every single day? They asked me, if we do, don't dress like we do up here. We need to dress in tennis shoes and regular clothes, because otherwise it'll be a little rougher for us. So that was one of the things that they asked us. And then they just we have to focus on how do we get some money and some help in these bus drivers' hands, and we need to do it like yesterday so that we don't lose any more. So I just really want to task us with looking at this and walking through this and making sure that we get it across the finish line.
I'll reserve my thoughts until after everybody else goes.
Okay.
Mr. Jing, did you have anything?
Well, it's an obvious problem, so we can't delay, and we just got to see what we can do and put it out on the table.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a problem. It's definitely not a new problem, and it's not a problem that's unique to just that area. And which is why it was so critical for us to pass the millage and for us to have the MOA put in place to ensure to our public that staff salary increases as well as hiring staff was a priority for that millage increase. Obviously, we're not going to get the revenue of that right away, but it's something that we can't let go of. We can't let go of that vision and that site, because it's the only way we're going to address any of the critical shortage areas that we have. I don't know. I don't know, but absolutely. We're not going to magically fix this crisis without paying them more, because they're significantly underpaid compared to the districts that are surrounding us in same-size districts.
Okay.
Yes, I'll ride a bus. I'll ask John down in South End to set up something for me. You know, the tricky part about the pay is, you know, yes, the millage passed, but the new bus drivers are only going to get about 400 something, you know, because that was all tiered on levels of experience, because we were trying to deal with the compression really with the millage. The MOU for new bus drivers would only get that 0.1. And then the other challenge is we've got a lot of other, like IAs was mentioned, who are, and the list could go on of, we raised this group, and it all has to be negotiated. So we as a board can say, this is what we want to do, but it has to be negotiated.
Right.
So, you know, some of that can be, as we enter into negotiations, we can direct, you know, the superintendent, whoever it is at the time, when it's time to do money, you know, hey, let's work on this. But all that ultimately has to be hashed out with the unions too.
If I may speak, it was September, October. I sent out a red flag saying that not only are we losing our bus drivers, the discipline, the pay, all of that stuff, right? I was told that we would have a solution. My solution that I had mentioned was to take the 25% salaries that you have, both for bus drivers, mechanics, and all that stuff that are not there, and the people that have been covering their jobs, send that to them, because the bus system has identified all of the routes that they have covered that are extra according to their thing. So why not take the people who have been here for and had the support of the district and offer that to them? I was told by Ms. Lisinski that we would have an opportunity, that something was coming, that they had developed, but here we are and it's February and we still don't have anything. We're losing bus drivers at a rate that we can't even replace them. So what I would like to do is bring in a workshop on the 21st and discuss this with 1010 and talk about what their needs are, and then immediately enact some of the things and call them to the table. Dr. Schiller, do you have anything? Did you want to say anything, Dr. Schiller?
Oh, if I could just add something on there, it is working conditions, you know, we do
Yeah.
have to think, so thanks for bringing that up. And is this something where we could ask the superintendent, Dr. Schiller, to come back at our next meeting with his recommendations?
There it
and
is.
His findings of
Yep.
how we can legally address this problem and swiftly.
And we bring our recommendations
Oh, yeah.
to him prior to make sure they're in line. So Dr. Schiller brings it and we can get this done.
Yeah.
Because this, I'll be honest with you, Mr. Rainey has been coming for 2 years saying the same thing, and we just keep saying, well, we'll negotiate it, we'll do it. So I love that idea. Dr. Schiller, is that okay with you?
Oh, sure.
Okay?
Can
Meet
I
with-
just add one more thing real
Oh,
fast?
yeah.
Just to kind of put it out there. Transportation gave back $1.8 million last year. I mean, a ton of money that was budgeted for transportation that was not used because we didn't fill those positions. This year, we're on track for $1.3 million. It's a significant amount of money, and I really want to challenge us to move like now. Like, how do we get this going as fast as possible? And I know that we have to talk with 1010. There's negotiations that happen there, but I mean, if we can do that in the next 30 days, I think that might give some hope to our drivers right now that are hanging on by a thread.
Well, I'll be honest, and I'm sorry, did anybody else wish to speak?
Yeah, I don't remember these conversations because it's been quite a while, but I think one of the issues with that money that was brought back was it helped cover the fact that we had raised to the $15 minimum wage increase as well. So I think that's a question for Ms. Lisinski to kind of update us on. And Ms. Campbell, I appreciate you bringing up the negotiation part too, because, you know, the unions came to the table to discuss how the millage will be spent, and they came to the conclusion that they felt was best for their members, each one of them. I do wish sometimes it was maybe worked a little bit differently so our more veteran people can get a little bit extra money. But now that teacher salary increase allocation doesn't have that requirement anymore, maybe we can do something about it. Yeah, I hear you on that, but I want to say we had that conversation about where the extra money went because of $15. So if Ms. Lisinski, but it didn't cover it all.
Well, and we don't use non-reoccurring dollars for reoccurring expense.
I would just like to get an update from Ms. Lisinski about that.
Sure. I think Ms.
Well,
Lisinski probably can.
And if I can just
You can
add
send her an email.
to the point of negotiations and that is we could decide right now, you know what, the big problem is, sorry, jumping ice. We need to recruit, right? We could decide right now as a board, we're going to do $5,000 with signing bonuses this spring, but we can't do that unless we negotiate it.
Yeah, and
You know what I mean? And so, and by the way, don't nobody take that to the paper. I'm just using that as a point. If we can't, as a board, we're willing to do this. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. Maybe that is exactly what we need to do, but we have to negotiate that. And you know, unintended consequences. We might have other people in our organization who say, "Hey, how about me?" And you know, right. So we need to take a look at that, and we need to have a closed session to do that kind of strategy before those bargaining sessions happen. I'm not saying we don't move and move fast, but that actually would lead into maybe something that my discussion point if we're done on this topic.
And just so everybody understands, a lot of what you just referred to, the $1.4 million, was a non-reoccurring. So that usually will fall to the bottom line, and then they'll use that for bonuses. But what the angle that I was trying to argue is that instead of just giving everybody across the board the money that the vacated bus drivers had, give the money to the bus drivers in the form, because you'll have somebody that doesn't cover the routes, but you might have somebody that's covering 3 a day.
Right.
So that was my explanation of that, using those non-reoccurring dollars to do that. The other one is I do want to remind the board, and many of you may not know, that we did put together a fast, in 2 instances, many times there's MOUs that are signed, delivered, and everything very quickly inside of our district, some that we may not even know about that go through with the union, right? So those are not huge negotiations where we're sitting there. The other thing that takes so much time is that we'll set up a negotiation thing where we'll bring something across the table, then the other side doesn't come back for a week. So 3 years ago, I asked to have us go for 7 straight days, and we pounded through it, and we got it done. But I'll tell, well, to be honest with you, Ms. Campbell, why don't you just say the way that you felt about it? But the thing is that we got it done. And to be honest with you, our bus drivers and many of our staff, including mechanics and everybody else, IAs were brought up, everything. They need to know that we have their back, and this is a way to send it, that we are coming and we're there for you. And that's all. So Dr. Schiller, if you'd like to do that, that'd be great. And if you can ask each one of us what we would like to include in that prior to make it in there, that'd be great.
I think what we're talking about here is, again, our lanes. You direct your CEO.
That's it.
What you want, and my staff and I will do the very level best to come back to you with the hows or whys and why nots, and what implications that would be. So it's not, if, don't ask, you turn and you say, this is what we want. And if I can get, again, knowing your thinking and some of your best ideas, we can factor that in. So that's precisely the policy board saying, policy-wise, we want to go here. We will then do the legwork and give to you our best analysis of short-term and long-term implications of what can be done and how we can do it.
Sounds great, Dr. Schiller. Sounds like we got some
So you just line it up and
cue it up.
Tee it up, and we'll knock them down the fairway. Straight down the fairway, no hook or slice.
Thank you, Dr. Schiller. Ms. Campbell, you had one that you wanted to discuss.
Yes. So I was looking at the policies that we had on the work session, reviewing, going through the bylaws, the first set of the bylaws. And I first had a question of how we picked the ones that we're going through, because I don't know if there was a method in the madness, because we started with 121 and then we skipped over some. So we're not going in order. I didn't know if we were going to hit some of the other ones out of that first set in our next session, but so that was part of it. And also, and the second part is, Dr. Schiller specifically talked about us looking at philosophy of the board. I don't think he was talking about 171.2 review of policy, philosophy, and goals. I think it more aligns with, besides this document, policy 118, which is specifically labeled the philosophy of the board. It's pretty broad, it's pretty generic, but it starts there. So I think we actually, and it's not tied, at least in this version, to any particular statutes. It makes sense that it wouldn't be, because it says philosophy of the board. But before we try to pound through, and I know that we had this conversation last time, we've just talked about several things in the last 30 minutes that we want to do at workshops. And we've got our normal stuff, like the budget, building and capital budget coming, and other policies that we are working through, including the several that we worked on today that are going through regular rulemaking. Can we slow down just a little bit? Because I want to do a good job at this. And this, honestly, is what he's saying needs to be done before we start taking applicants, and which we will be doing very soon. Maybe rather than, and we're also waiting for Neola and all that. I'm not saying today was a waste of time, those sections, but I think we got close to having a waste of time because we didn't have what we needed, and we've set for ourselves a very aggressive policy review schedule, and we think we found out today it's not going to be as simple as what we thought.
Okay.
So if we can slow down, but then before we do any more policies, do this first. Because, honestly, just me, I don't really like the cerebral work of this. I like more of the practical, what's going to come out of this. But this is work that we do. It is a good exercise. We are a new board. We need to have these discussions, philosophical discussions, before we move forward. But I would suggest it would be better use of our time, especially in the next workshop, in the next 2 workshops, to do this work rather than some of these little technical nitpicking. We're not going to change it anyway, but maybe the statute doesn't line up kind of thing, which takes time when we've got really a little bit more important work to do. And we can still keep the schedule going, but maybe spread it out a little bit more.
Okay. Anybody have any comment? before I start?
We had a longer list, actually, that we willowed down that was much more aligned with boom, 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 boom. But I thought the focus here to kick this off would be what are the bylaws?
Yes.
And what is the relationship to that of the superintendent? Now, we've got a ton of things that have come in from Neola, what, today, Paul, I think it was, or the other day?
Yeah, we had a new update.
Right. We've got those that are working through the system, but what I was really trying to get to is what you held up there. There are certain things that the board needs to understand with regard to where your priorities are, and a good exercise is there. And I would agree with you that we can get on a more systematic and relaxed schedule, but there are some things that we need to pull out that probably have to be addressed. And the earlier that we can hear from the board, well, what about this, what about that? You know, then we can put focus on, but he and staff are working on those that are coming through the pipeline, and it's not going to happen but I do think we've got a running start now where the board now can start funneling which ones where.
Yep.
You know, and you know, the next crew of things that I'd like to bring to the board is what I'm going to be bringing now to the steering committee and other larger groups, the student conduct, the dress policy, because we're trying to get that whole picture of everything that might expulsion that might fit into. And so that's how I see it, but I think what Board Member Campbell has just identified is the heart and soul of what you really need to deal with. What is your mission, vision, operational goals, and how does it reflect the current board's thinking? I see it doing two things. One, for the board to refine so staff knows how to operate, and two, in conjunction with your search.
So, Dr. Schiller, if I may, you know, we can slow down the mission, vision, and beliefs. I feel that we have a ton of policies that needed to be reviewed in 5 years, and I don't want to stop looking at the policies because we now have a mission and spend 2 periods on that. We can take this. We asked Paul to bring forward and Dr. Schiller a process that we can look at it. We can spread it over 4 or 5 policy-making sessions, and we can still get down to the ones that we need. We need the dress code, and there's a bunch of them that we need to update that are pertinent to, say, for instance, in some cases, the dress code's not being able to be enforced because of the things that we have on it make it non-enforceable. So there's just things like that. I wanted to speak to the order. You had mentioned, like, how did this order come up? Dr. Schiller had mentioned that we wanted to focus right at the beginning on board policy, board of direction, and all of that. And the reason for those was because exactly what he said. We want to be able to tell the incoming superintendent who's coming here, hey, we know our lane, we do well, and he was trying to get us there. So those policies that you see before you were written specifically for that, and that's where he was trying to go. And I think by going through them, we all identified, hey, this is good, this is good, this is good, minus Neola. So we've got, I think it was a very good process, and we just have a couple coming back from Neola to make sure, right? And we go from there. So I don't think it was a waste of time. I do believe, though, that we should be going through all of them to see if there's anything that we want to pull, right?
And to what extent that's right.
Right.
Each of you would identify what you would consider as priorities that we can put our focus on to see how it fits into the Neola review, the sequence, but there are some that are probably more critical than others. The instructional and so forth. I mean, you know, the gang's doing that in what they're doing in a rational way. But I think there are those that have been hanging fire that need to be addressed, and those that you would identify. We work at your direction. And I think what we're talking about for the last 45 minutes or so is very important, is that the board's driving the priorities of what the administration will be, and in a reciprocal relationship, identifying here what perhaps you ought to be thinking about as priorities and all. So I think it's a kind of a two-way process, but you drive it. You're the policy board.
So I would say we have a bunch of these coming back, right? We have a couple other ones that are going to be added, and I think that we can take that as the workshop along with the transportation piece that we just added. and really have a really good on the 21st. And then Dr. Schiller can give us direction to spread that out over a couple of meetings, and how he thinks.
Spread this out over a
Yeah.
couple meetings?
Yep.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I mean, I tend to agree with Katie's idea on starting here because I feel like this does really move us in the right direction. So maybe can this go towards the front of it, and then, I mean, we can work on policy simultaneously. I can, I don't know if
Yeah.
everybody can, but,
Yeah, if that, I mean, I just wanted to say that we didn't have to stop everything we're doing to
Right.
do this. We can deliver this, and we can make it, that was the intent, was that we have it at the next meeting, a portion of it, let Dr. Schiller kind of spread it out, and he can communicate with you and Ms. Campbell
So-
to how that's going to go.
then for a takeaway for us all, could we all take this home and look at these, what is written here, and cross out any that you don't like, add any that you do, so that when we come back, we can start working through this.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I think, again, looking out, how far is it till you'll start doing all of the screening, interviews?
Right.
Need to get all this set, because that's going to consume a good part of chunk of your time in,
Sure.
help me, late April and May.
Yeah.
And so we got to get some of these things in place so you can redirect, plus the budget and the collective bargaining. Those are the big rocks there, gang.
Yep.
We got a lot coming up.
Appreciate it. So, Ms. Wright, I think that what you said was, everybody has their homework, let's look at it.
Yeah.
Dr. Schiller's going to put together some sort of a process. We definitely identify some portion of our next agenda to address it, and then any follow-ups we can go. If we don't need them, then that's great, but if we do, then we just continue to work at it as part of it.
I'm good with that.
Is that okay, Ms. Campbell?
Yes, what I'm just trying to avoid is us going down
Sure.
line by line by line with ones that really aren't relevant to our current course, knowing that we can come back and get them and hit them later. But
You're
let's
saying that
focus.
this is important.
Let's,
above those.
yes,
Okay.
and I thank you for saying big rocks. Let's do the big rocks first. And if dress code is a big rock, let's do dress code. But I'd rather tackle dress code, which is not going to be a short conversation. It'll be a shorts conversation, but not a short
3 minutes.
conversation. It's
3
getting
minutes.
late.
We got 3 minutes.
But I mean, but some of these, these can wait.
Yeah.
Those are really important.
Yeah, I get
We
you.
need to tackle them.
And speaking of big rocks and little rocks, we'll be sending out to you any day now. Staff has been working very diligently in putting together the big rocks and the little rocks, going all the way out to the start of the new school year. Okay, of what you can see, what their work is, and in preparation for your permanent superintendent, we're trying to do some forward planning for the tactical planning for the third term, the fourth term, the closing up of the school year, summer school, opening, and by each department. That'll be coming out to you, Russ, when? End of this week. You'll be getting that. You're working hard, board.
All right, is there anybody that has anything else for the good of the board? Dr. Schiller, do you have anything else to report?
I do.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Good, thank you, Gibbs. That piece. Go ahead, Gibbs.
All right, board members, I'm notifying you that advice is needed regarding the case, the School Board of Brevard County, Florida versus Jewel Labs, Inc. et al., federal case number 3:20-CV-04267. Pursuant to 286.011 Florida statute known as the Government in the Sunshine Act, I am requesting an attorney-client session with the board for the purpose of discussing and evaluating compromise of said case. I will ask the board's clerk to cause reasonable public notice of the time and date of this attorney-client session and the names of the persons attending to be published. If the board approves, I will work with the board clerk to coordinate dates for the executive session, working with our counsel's availability, and provide the notice of the meeting inclusive of scheduling a court reporter. As required by this statute, only the following individuals will be present: school board members Katie Gamble, Jennifer Jenkins, Matt Susan, Jean Trent, Megan Wright, Superintendent Dr. Robert Schiller, Paul Gibbs, General Counsel. I will ask a court reporter to record the session also as required by statute. Their notes will be fully transcribed and filed with the clerk of the school board. Upon the conclusion of any litigation and/or settlement of all claims arising out of this case, the transcript will be made public record.
I recommend the board hold an attorney-client session pursuant to section 286.011 Florida statutes to discuss strategy and settlement of pending litigation. If there are no objections, I will instruct our attorney to work with the board clerk and schedule as soon thereafter as matter may be heard. Anybody have any objections? No? All right. Next.
All right, board members, I'm notifying you that advice is needed regarding the case Shirley Becerra Steele et al. Versus the School Board of Brevard County, Florida et al., federal case number 6:21-CV-02035. Pursuant to section 286.011 Florida statute known as the Government in the Sunshine Act, I am requesting an attorney-client session with the board for the purpose of discussing and evaluating the strategy of this case. I will ask the board's clerk to cause reasonable public notice of the time and date of this attorney-client session and the names of the persons attending to be published. If the board approves, I will work with the board clerk to coordinate dates for the executive session, working with our council's availability, and provide notice of the meeting inclusive of scheduling a court reporter. As required by this statute, only the following individuals will be present. School board members Katie Campbell, Jennifer Jenkins, Matt Susan, Jean Trent, Megan Wright, Superintendent Dr. Robert Schiller, Paul Gibbs, General Counsel, Robert Sniffen, Esquire, Terry Harmon, Esquire. I will also ask a court reporter to record the session, also as required by statute. Their notes will be fully transcribed and filed with the clerk of the school board upon the conclusion of any litigation and/or settlement of all claims arising out of this case. The transcript will be made public record.
I recommend the school board, or the board, hold an attorney-client session pursuant to section 286.011 Florida statutes to discuss strategy of a pending litigation. If there are no objections, I will instruct our attorney to work with the board clerk and schedule as soon thereafter as matter may be heard. Good? We all here? Okay. Everybody happy? Now, Dr. Schiller, do you have anything that you wish to discuss, further to report?
Oh, no.
Okay. With there being no further business, this meeting is now adjourned. Sorry, I didn't hit it that way.